Clayton White, you get a game ball. Nick Imanwari, you get a game ball. Demetrius White, Debo Williams, Ban Martin Scott, you get a game ball. Everybody else, sit your asses down. You'll get nothing and like it. South Carolina with an impressive performance in Norman, Oklahoma, or as they call it over there, because there's no O in Norman. Not on Saturday. South Carolina absolutely demoralized Oklahoma in the first quarter of that football game and then needed basically nothing from the rest of the team. And they got nothing from the rest of the team for the remainder of that game, but won themselves an SEC football game against a big-time opponent on the road comfortably. Welcome in to Wire. He's Cole Bryson. My name is Diesel. You're the what, Cole? Tolos, who turn it on, leave it on each and every day. You know what's up. If you're already in the stream, as 47 of you already are, that's awesome. If not, jump on the stream on Facebook, on Twitter, or on YouTube. Just search for The Fan Upstate. Cole, off the air in the office just a few minutes ago, you and I were talking, and I said, you know what? I'm going to make some South Carolina fans angry here in this opening segment.
Easy to do, by the way.
Yeah, it doesn't take a whole lot. The truth is, Cole, I'm not saying anything that's not blatantly obvious about Saturday's performance in Norman, Oklahoma. The defense was phenomenal for the first quarter and the remainder of the football game, but they really showed out in the first quarter of that game, Cole. After that, the offense was putrid. They were terrible. They were awful. And the only thing that kept you in that football game is that Oklahoma is equally awful on offense. Prove to me that I'm wrong. Explain to me. South Carolina fans, put on those garnet-colored glasses. Text into the show, 71307, like I know you're about to. Start your text with keyword fan, and tell me why I'm nothing but a certified hater.
Well, I mean, I'm just telling you this. South Carolina goes on the road, defeats Oklahoma, and it's not even close, and you're not giving them any credit. Are you kidding me?
I'm giving the defense
what is this?
All the credit. The defense gets all the credit,
but not the offense.
Do you know how many yards per carry Rocket Sanders averaged in that football game?
Not many.
Just average.
Many, but he didn't have to.
Just take a guess. Just take a guess.
2.
Yeah, exactly. 2.2 yards per carry. Why in the hell are they letting Dowell Loggins get back on the plane after these road trips? That's something I simply cannot figure out. I know that you've got a first-year starter back there taking the snaps, but we're like, what, 7 games into the season now?
Yeah.
You should have most of those issues figured out. You should have some semblance of a functioning offense figured out, but still, Cole, this deep into the season, South Carolina's offense friggin' sucks. The defense is phenomenal. All the credit in the world goes out to that defense and what they did.
But guess what? You know, my counter is, guess what South Carolina didn't do? Guess what Lenora Sellers didn't do? South Carolina Diesel, and I hear you. I really do. But South Carolina didn't turn the ball over 4 times. Lenora Sellers didn't throw interceptions. Robbie Ashford didn't give up the football. Lenora Sellers didn't put the football on the ground and gift wrap it like he has done in previous weeks. So while the offense didn't have an explosive game, I'll argue with you. I'll counter and say they didn't have to. They didn't have to. What are you asking them to do? 35-9, it's not like you're having to go out there with an aggressive mindset of play calling and throw and air it out and West Coast offense this thing.
What am I asking them to do? I'm asking them to be functional. I'm asking them to not get outgained by a team that you beat 35-9.
But you know what, though? At the end of the day, what shows up? The win and the loss. Look, South Carolina goes on the road. And do I disagree with you on Dowell Loggins? No, I've said all season long that Dowell Loggins is not good. I don't push back on that. However, I won't apologize if I were a Gamecock fan for going on the road in the SEC and getting another road win in the conference. And look, I know that Oklahoma, it's their first year, right? You're having to really look at them from a different aspect as you do everybody else in the SEC because they're not SEC level yet. They've got major issues, Diesel. However, I think South Carolina did exactly what they have to do. I don't think it's fair to take anything away from the win. South Carolina fans should plant their flag. They should be waving their flag all through Spartanburg, all through Greenville, all through the upstate. Our Gamecock Tolos out there should feel as good as they have felt in a very long time for going on the road and that game not even being close.
Well, South Carolina deserves credit for a couple of things, Cole, that I find absolutely fascinating in this football game. Oklahoma fired their offensive coordinator, Seth Luttrell, after the football game. So, number one, you got him fired. You got an OC fired. And then you made Oklahoma burn Jackson Arnold's red shirt in the first half of that football game.
Oh.
That blows me away. So normally we talk about, and I'm sorry if this is going to sound like hate, but this year, 2 weeks ago, we were scratching our heads at some of the decision making that Shane Beamer was doing. We're talking about that fake, what was it, fake punt, fake field goal that they attempted against. It wouldn't be a field goal. They didn't get close enough to kick a field goal against Ole Miss. That fake punt that they tried to go for in the first half of that football game. And then you got Oklahoma pulling the same crap, a fake punt on your own 20. What in the hell was Oklahoma thinking? What in the hell was Seth Luttrell and whoever the special teams coordinator at Oklahoma is? What were they thinking? You got teams pulling boneheaded moves to try to pull something out of their rear ends against you, to get some kind of spark against you. You got teams making DA decisions in the first half of these football games. Like, South Carolina's defense deserves an immense level of credit. Give them an extra slice of cake on the flight home or something. If this was the year of revenue sharing, I'd say sprinkle an extra $25K all over that defensive line, which is going to happen one of these days, right? You're going to see teams, spliffing these players when they make big time performances, when the defense shows out and has a big time performance. You're going to see these teams share a little bit more revenue their way because they're going to feel like they have to eventually, right? Yeah. So you get a ton of credit for what you do, making them fire their OC, making them burn their quarterback's red shirt, and then making them make terrible decisions in the special teams game. South Carolina's defense, absolutely, like, hats off performance to you.
I guess my thing is, going into the game, Diesel, you and I talked about it, and I talked about it on Friday. I did have concern that South Carolina was still going to struggle with the exact same issues that they had been struggling with. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the penalties, talking about the turnovers, talking about Lenora Sellers just putting the ball on the ground and throwing interceptions. That's what my concern was. So I hear you. I understand that Dow Loggins is not good. I'm not going to push back on any of that. My thing is, though, you are seeing bright spots. Even though the offense didn't go for 400 yards, you are seeing Joshua Simon get involved. You are seeing Van Jacobs.
You didn't even go for 300 yards.
Well, you didn't even go for barely 200. I mean, Lenore's 175? Lenora Sellers, 175. You're starting to see receivers get more and more involved. And I know right now today or on Saturday, that South Carolina offense would not have been able to beat the top teams in the SEC. I acknowledge that. However, if you're going to get where you want to be, you've got to have stepping stones. You've got to have improvement week over week. And I have said all along, Diesel, that Shane Beamer knows how to motivate his team as good as anybody. After the LSU game, after the Alabama game, I believe Shane Beamer knew what buttons to push. I really do. And look, again, I hear you. I hear everything you said, but I just give South Carolina a crap ton of credit. I really do. I give the coaching staff credit, except for Dow Loggins. I've had problems with him all season, but the coaching staff for having the team prepared, for not turning the football over. Lenora Sellers, the quarterback, Diesel, he didn't have a huge day, but guess what he didn't do? He didn't turn the football. Yeah. He didn't cost you the game. He didn't put your defense in situations that were tough that they had to get out of. The defense played with a lead. They pinned their ears back, and that offense did just enough to keep the defense with confidence. And I'm telling you, man, if the offense can just keep improving, South Carolina has a shot to get to where they want to be this season. They still have their goals in front of them, and I still think this is a team that's dangerous to the team in the upstate that South Carolina fans want to beat and would absolutely put a bow on their season. I think South Carolina is good enough to do that.
Well, given that Wofford is the only FCS team on this schedule for South Carolina, that's going to count as a win to get them to bowl eligibility. And then all you got to do is win one more football game after this, Cole. You got to, I think now coming off a bye, you're going to have a really good chance hosting Texas A&M. If you can get anything resembling that kind of a performance against Texas A&M out of your defense, and if you can get a clean offensive performance, no turnovers, and they had 6 penalties for 42 yards. I mean, without scoring a whole lot of points and throwing for a whole lot of yards and Rocket Sanders busting it open to pick up a whole lot of yards on the ground, it was, outside of that, a perfect offensive performance for South Carolina. Didn't make any mistakes, didn't shoot themselves in the foot a lot. You're going to get, I think you're going to win at least one of A&M and Vanderbilt, maybe both. And then you're probably going to handle Wofford pretty easily. Outside of that, Cole, you got Missouri and Clemson ahead. I mean, now we're looking at potentially 7 wins. 8 is a stretch. 8 is a big time stretch for me at this point. Well, but I think it's very easy. Very, very easily could happen that South Carolina picks up 3 more regular season wins. And now we're talking about a 7-win football team going into a bowl game with a big time matchup. Now here's where the real rubber meets the road for Shane Beamer. Can you keep these guys at South Carolina next year? Nick Imanwari is a junior. Can you keep him from going into the NFL draft? Can you keep him from transferring? Same thing for Dylan Stewart. You got a young offensive line, young quarterback. Rocket Sanders, I assume, is a senior and is going to be going off to the NFL. If you can get yourself another good running back that's coming up through your system, or if you can get another one out of the portal, this South Carolina team can round into form of being a more complete football team. There are holes in the team. There are holes in the performance on a week-by-week basis, but they're potentially rounding into shape.
Or maybe they're not. Maybe they're not capable. Here's what I mean by that. Maybe they're not capable of being the offensive team we want them to be, Diesel. Why? Because that's not their MO. Maybe that's just not this team. What if the 2024 South Carolina team just doesn't have the ceiling offensively? And I'm glad T-Swizzle brought this up. Got to be able to score against teams that can actually score and not whack Oklahoma. Look, I understand Oklahoma's offense is putrid. I get that. But Diesel, what if this team is who they are? What if South Carolina is going to have to win games down the stretch by just being who they are defensively? I don't think that – here we are, 7 weeks into the season. Now they're 4-3. 7 weeks into the season. I think that what you're seeing is who they are. I know that they can continue to get better, but I'm just saying from the standpoint of having expectations on this team to go up and put 450 yards on opponents, maybe that's just not who this team is.
Well, if you're requiring that South Carolina pick up 21 points off turnovers in the first half of football games, that is a tall task. That's like I said, phenomenal defensive performance for South Carolina. But if you're telling me that's what they have to stand a chance to beat the remaining teams on their schedule, I'm telling you it's a tough road to hoe, right? You've got to have the offense picking up the defense and vice versa. You have to have the offense being able to put up two touchdowns and a field goal every game. If the offense can pick up 17 points on its own without needing a defensive turnover and putting themselves in phenomenal field position to go get it. If the offense can put together 3 drives that score points over the course of a game, you're setting yourself up for a really good spot.
And I don't push back on that. The only thing I would say is when you talk about expectations and this team having to get from here to there, from 5 to 9 offensively, maybe, and again, I agree with you in the sense they've got to have offensive production. I'm not doubting that. But you know what they can have to win games? They can have just enough. If they have just enough against A&M, guess what? They'll win the game. If they have just enough offense, Diesel, against Missouri, guess what? They'll win the game as long as that defense continues to perform at that level. And if they have just enough against Vandy and Wofford and Clemson, the defense continues to be consistent. The defense has been consistent all season. If you can get just enough and not have these unrealistic expectations of scoring 30 points a game, it doesn't matter what the score is as long as you walk out with a W, right?
JB on the stream says, with this defense, I think they can win out. T Swizzle says, well, he accuses them of puff passing on some of that good stuff. On the text line, 71307, start your text with keyword fan. Would love to get your thoughts on the South Carolina performance on Saturday, on the Clemson performance on Saturday, whatever else you want to talk about. Text in 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. We'd love to get your thoughts out on the show today. Texter says, not going to win many games with this offense. It was sorry. Loggins is pathetic, and Beamer doesn't see it. Well, I guarantee you Beamer does see it, but he's not going to fire Dow Loggins in the middle of the season when you're 4-3, 4-2.
Look, Texter, you have won 4 games with that offense, and you scored 33 on LSU. So, you can win games. That's my point.
I think Shane Beamer probably looks at what Dow Loggins is doing and saying, I understand what you want to do. I understand that you don't really have the full personnel that you think you want to have or need to have to go out and perform at the level that you want to perform. We're going to get you what you need. Or Shane Beamer's saying that to his face and in the back of his mind saying, come December, come January, I'm going to be making a move and going after a lights out offensive coordinator because I've got to save my own ass.
And he may.
Yeah. He's like, I've got a phenomenal defense. I got to go find an offensive coordinator with a pulse.
At the end of the day, though, I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think it is somewhere between Diesel. Dow Loggins doesn't have the exact pieces he needs offensively. I still don't trust that receiving room. And it can be also a little bit of Dow Loggins is the issue. I don't think it's 100% on Dow Loggins. I don't think it's 100% on the receivers or the offensive line. I think it's always a collective, a mix. And I do think there's a lot to be said about Dow Loggins not having the personnel he needs. Again, they've got the defense to win a lot of games, but they have to have just enough.
Texter says, is it that Loggins is bad or is it in the execution by the offense?
Well, again, could be a little bit of both, right?
Yeah, the offense executed enough to not make mistakes on Saturday, so that's marked improvement. Texter says, Diesel's doing his best to carry on the former show host's turn on, then turn off takes. Texter, I don't really know that that's a take, what I've been saying to start the show. The defense was phenomenal. The offense sucked. You're probably a year away from having a serviceable offense. How is that some sort of a groundbreaking take? I understand that it may not be what you want to hear, but it's the truth. Anybody with half a brain can see that that's the truth. Texter says, by the way, Texters, please sign your text. Put your name on these, please, so that we can shout you out. Texter says, I think Clemson scores 60 points on Miami in an ACC championship game. They are giving up 38 points a game in the ACC. Really bad. Yes, Texter, we're going to talk about that game in the next segment, I believe. Texter says, nobody would be doubting the Gamecocks if that LSU game had gone the way it should have. People have forgotten already.
I agree with that. And look, not only the LSU game, Texter, from the, 419. Texter from the 419, what if you beat Alabama like you were supposed to as well? Again, I know what ifs, if what's, what is it, the old saying, if and what's were, I get that. But what I'm saying is you did put up 33 points on LSU, 25 on Alabama's pretty good defense. Ole Miss, you absolutely wet the bed. Everybody admits that. But you've done enough this season, take away the turnovers, and all of a sudden you might be a 5-6 win team still in the playoff hunt. However, you're not, and the turnovers cost you.
Yeah, there's a lot of holes in this team, and we're starting to see the inconsistency round into form just a little bit. That's showing obviously consistent defensive prowess. And if you can maintain that and get some semblance of an offense going, man, this is a scary, scary football team.
Madcraft says, that's fine, Texter. 135-60. Miami will be your final if that's the case. I knew Madcraft would have something to say about that. Phil on the Facebook stream says, as a smart coach once said, disguise your weakness and exploit your strength. Loggins doesn't know how to use his players. JB says, I guess since your team is lighting it up against inferior opponents, make y'all world beaters now. He's going back and forth with T Swizzle in the stream. And Tolos, if you like to talk trash, like the stream's the perfect place to do it. It's great. I mean, it is so good. JB and T Swizzle going at it. It's every single day on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You can fight it out with your other total. It's the absolute best. They're going at it right now.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, we've got 80 people in here watching the stream right now as we speak. Be number 81. Jump into the stream. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, whatever profile it is, what you've got, whatever account it is. I guarantee you have one of those.
You got to.
If you're saying I've never been on YouTube before, but I've got a Gmail account, guess what? You can get on YouTube. It's the same company. All the logins and credentials all work the same. So jump in there, chop it up with JB and T Swizzle and Phil Shifley and Madcraft and everybody who's already in there getting it going.
And if you're new to the show, download the free Odyssey app, AUDACY. It's free. Again, AUDACY. The best part about it is, number one, it's free. Number two, if you miss something earlier in the show, you can use the free rewind feature and go back and listen to any part of the show. It's the free Odyssey app. Clemson, they had an impressive performance, but is JB right? Was it against another nobody? We'll get into that next. You got to do your research if you're going to be a Tolo. JB and T Swizzle going at it in the stream. T Swizzle says, I'm just stating facts. Maybe you should do your research.
Ooh.
God, I love it.
Hit him with the do your research.
I love it. Oh, man,
He's
I
never
love
going to
it.
recover from that one.
There's nothing better, man. Keep up the trash talk. The stream is the best place to be. It really is, man.
The only problem with the stream, Cole, and we've had a couple of Tolos point this out, is if Tolos are on different platforms, they can't see each other's messages, their comments. So most of our Tolos are watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
We have a few that watch on Twitter and a few that watch on Facebook. And if there's just one or two of them on a particular platform, it probably feels to them like they're just talking to the ether and nobody's replying back. But we get to see all of it. Like our system conglomerates all of them. And it feels cutthroat.
Hop on the YouTube stream then, Tolos. Hop in, JB and T Swizzle right now going at it. I mean, this is great. Just pop the popcorn. Diesel and I don't even have to show prep. We'll just read their comments. It's fascinating. Clemson fans, South Carolina fans, always going at it. Nothing better. Speaking of Clemson, we'll do a little Paul up, Paul down, Diesel. What went right? What did we see that we liked? What did we see that we had a problem with on Saturday as Clemson ousted Virginia 48-31. A lot of offense for the Tigers. 48 points for Clemson. T-Swizzle, any other Clemson Tolos out there, Clemson fans that are listening, give us your Paul up, Paul down. Basically, what you saw that you liked, what you saw that concerned you a little bit. 71307. Start your text with the word fan. Phone lines are also open. 844-FAN-PHONE, 844-326-3663. Diesel, obviously, we'll start with the positives, right? You score 48 points. You win another game. Look, it's an inferior opponent. I do get that. I do recognize that.
4-2 Virginia. I wouldn't call them inferior.
Oh, they're inferior.
I wouldn't.
They're not good.
They're not world beaters by any means. By any means, okay? But, they had beaten Wake Forest by one.
God.
You're
trying your best. You're trying your best.
They handled Coastal Carolina on the road. And they beat Boston College. Bill O'Brien led Boston College.
There you go. I do like that. I do like Bill O'Brien.
See, I'm trying to put myself in the mindset of a Clemson media member.
Right.
Who, you and I and all of us have kind of rolled our eyes a lot at some of the OG Clemson media members. By the way, not David Hood, because he's phenomenal. I'm talking about the rest of them. David's great. Yeah. I'm talking about the rest. Who will try to pump up these statistics and just lights out performances offensively.
Nothing
against
negative.
Some weak opponents, and they'll try to do anything and everything they can because they've learned from the best. They've learned from Dabo how to make anybody sound like a world beater.
He does each and every week on Tuesdays. If you want to hear the ACC teams pumped up, listen to Dabo. 48 points offensively for Clemson. The first Paul up, Diesel, I'll say, look, the offense, they're still humming. There's absolutely nothing right now. Again, keywords right now. There's nothing right now that's going to get in the way of that offense except for that offense. I really do believe with the schedule that Clemson has, yes, they'll face one good defense at the very end of the season. But my biggest Paul up is Clemson's not getting in Clemson's way, right? They're continuing to put up a ton of points. Yes, it takes 4 quarters, but guess what? Games are 4-quarter games. That's what they play 4 quarters for. I understand that there are Paul downs. There are negatives, and we'll get to that. But Clemson, in my opinion, Diesel, when you look at the totality of the schedule and the rest of the opponents that Clemson plays in 2024, the only team that's going to get in Clemson's way is Clemson. Offensively, they're continuing to hum. They're continuing to roll, putting up, nearly 50 points a game, 40 to 50 points a game against bad defenses. But you're doing what you're supposed to do. I've seen Clemson teams in the past that even won national championships play down to their opponents. I have not seen Clemson as of yet. And I know the Florida State game was kind of sloppy. They didn't really look the best in that game, but I have yet, Diesel, to see Clemson play down to an opponent. So I would say that's the biggest pull up for me, the consistency of the offense still being able to hum like it is.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're putting up 500-plus yards on any FBS defense, you're having yourself a particularly good football game. Cade Klubnik, good enough through the air. I mean, 3 touchdowns, that's phenomenal, right? 380 yards. I would have liked to have seen his completion percentage just a little bit higher, but when you've got a big lead and you're taking a big lead down to the fourth quarter, you don't have to be as precise. What I really liked, I did like Cade's performance. I did like a couple of things. I like the balance between the running game and the throwing game. I think it was like 38 rushes and 37 throws, or vice versa. The problem, Cole, is that we saw a very slow first quarter offensive start. They only got a field goal there in that first quarter. If Clemson had put a touchdown or 2 touchdowns on the board in that first quarter, Cole, you kind of put the game away early and don't give Virginia a chance to mount a comeback late. I mean, it was I know one of them was a touchdown with a minute and a half to play on the clock, so it was garbage time touchdown. But still, they gave up 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter of that football game, Cole, putting a lot of guys out there that, second team, third team guys out there in the fourth quarter. I mean, I want to see Clemson lock a team down for the entire game. Don't give them a chance to come back out. And Phil Maffa picked up a couple of touchdowns on the game, but he didn't really light up the scoreboard, right? Yeah. 18 carries for just under 80 yards.
And again, there are negatives. They're not the same problems. They're not the same issues that other teams are experiencing. But if you do have to find a Paul down, if you do have to find a negative, I hear you about the slow start. I don't disagree there. The yardage late in the game, I don't love it. I know a lot of people will say, Diesel, well, this garbage time, like you said. But at the end of the day, like, Virginia shouldn't be scoring 31 points on your defense.
It matters. Garbage time, like a lot of these AP voters, unless they're coming out of the Southeast, and eventually we're talking about the committee voters, a lot of them aren't studying the entire game. It's impossible to study the totality of every single football game and understand the nuances and the whys. If somebody from out west is looking, like an AP voter is looking at the box scores, and they give about 20 seconds worth of look over, glance over all these scores, well, they see 48-31, and they think, oh, this is kind of a shootout, right? Yep. This is a relatively close football game.
Big Ten game.
It wasn't a close football game, but to them it is. And so I'm looking at, what Clemson is doing in the AP rankings, only moving up 1 spot to number 9 this week. And I'm saying, well, that's a direct result of giving up 21 points in the fourth quarter.
And you're not playing anybody. I mean, look, if that offends you, if that upsets you as a Clemson fan, and I know T. Swizzle and JB going back and forth on it in the stream, and Clemson fans on the look, my goal is not to offend you. I'm just being honest. You're not playing anybody. So if you wanna tout this offense as the greatest offense on turf, that's fine. However, I've said several times this season, you and I have talked about it. I said it on Friday. You're doing what you're supposed to do. The only concern, the biggest paw down, Diesel, is people will disagree with me. David Hood might disagree with this 100%, and that's fine. But the biggest paw down for Clemson, you still don't know who you are. I mean, come on. Do you really know who you are? And I'm not trying to be a hater. I'm not trying to be a Clemson hater here, and you may think that, but that's okay. It's hard to really know who you are when your goals are different than what you're doing right now. If your goals are bigger than what you're playing in right now, in the sandbox that you're in right now, it's hard to know if you can handle the bullies outside of that sandbox until you get out of the sandbox. But unfortunately, you're not going to know.
Well, I sincerely hope, and this is, something we've gone back and forth on a couple of times over the last 2 weeks or so, that this proposed mid-season challenge thing that the Big Ten and the SEC are potentially looking at, I sincerely hope that the ACC and the Big 12 are looking at the exact same thing, are looking at a flex game somewhere around week 7 or week 8 where, a top top 3 team in your conference is scheduled to play a top 3 team in the other conference. It's sort of randomized because you're never going to know who's 1-1, who's 2-2 at that point, and you got to start making plans. You can't wait until the week before. So, you could say, all right, we're going to play a top 3 team as of week number 5. We're going to play them in week number 8, and we got 3 weeks to figure out how we're going to move our people around. But at least at that point, Cole, if you're playing right now, who would it be? BYU, Iowa State, somebody like that. You're playing a team that's inside the top 20 in the middle part of your schedule, which Clemson is not getting by virtue of the ACC, just being a weak conference. Louisville was up there. They looked like they were going to be a ranked opponent. Fell off the schedule. Pitt may still be a ranked team by the time you play them, but they might not be. So you might not have another ranked opponent on your schedule until maybe you play South Carolina. I mean, South Carolina got an AP vote this week, so there's a chance you're playing South Carolina late. You need to start figuring out a way, if you're the ACC, to put some real challenges on the schedule for teams like Clemson.
Well, you can in the non-conference, but Clemson, they didn't do well. They didn't do well in that one non-conference test. JB on the YouTube stream says Cole is 100% correct, and he's a Clemson fan. Yeah, JB, some Clemson fans out there can be objective. They can take off the orange glasses. I have been a Clemson fan my entire life. However, guess what? Number one, I see outside of my orange glasses. Number two, I'm not going to pump up a fan base and pump up a team that hasn't deserved it yet. You've won a lot of games. You look really good against the ACC. But what have you done outside of the ACC? Well, you only played one game and you crapped the bed. You didn't score a touchdown. So it's just hard it's hard for me to sit here, Diesel, regardless of if I'm a Clemson fan or not, and say, oh, hey, Diesel, this team's really good. This team's going to go win a playoff game. This team might be one of the Final Four teams. Guess what? This team has a chance to play in a national championship.
Yeah.
That's hard for me to do and mean. Like, I could do it and fake it, but guess what? In order for me to actually say it and mean it, I just can't until I actually see substance them playing against a good team.
Benjamin Fortson, who I believe this is the first time we've ever seen Benjamin in the stream. What's up, man? Thanks for jumping in on YouTube. He says Clemson is an average football team bullying an inferior team. Any inferior team they can get their hands on. The truth hurts. It's hard to say, Benjamin, that you're wrong. Look, Clemson is doing what they should be doing against inferior opponents. They're blasting them to the other side of the stadium, right? They're kicking their butts. But what does that mean when you actually get into playing the Georgias, the LSUs, the Ohio States of the world? That means you're maybe not all prepared and what you need to be. So you get a false sense of who you are as a program. So, Dabo loves to talk about how many ACC titles Clemson has, but does that really mean anything when you're playing against weak opponents? John Dog on the stream says, it seems like the AP number 1 is not where you want to be. Well, that is the dang truth, John Dog. Number 1 team has gone down, 3 times this year? It's brutal. Texter says, as a transplanted Illini fan, I have to get a plug in for the sick throwback hand-painted leather helmets against Michigan. Yes, Texter, those were incredible. They look great, and you got to win wearing them. Please wear them again. Can y'all just make that your everyday uniform?
It's
because
really
it was absolutely awesome to see
really
that
good.
And to see you kick Michigan's ass while wearing them.
The last thing I'll say, Diesel, before we run to a break, I acknowledge that Clemson right now is very, very good. I acknowledge that. I won't deny that. I could be wrong in the sense of maybe this team really is getting better. Maybe this team, by the time they play an SEC team that's worth a crap, maybe they'll continue to get better to where they're not the same team that played Georgia. They have more confidence. They have better execution. So I'm not just completely saying there's no way you can't be good and there's no way you can't have goals this postseason. I'm just saying I'm not going to claim something that I haven't seen happen until I see it happen. Yeah, we make predictions all the time, but I'm just telling you that hold off on those predictions until you see Clemson against South Carolina. Is South Carolina an upper-tier SEC team? No, but they have an upper-tier defense. They have an elite defense. and that will show you, I think, the South Carolina game. I wasn't impressed with Louisville, and I know Louisville might be a little bit closer than most games have, but I believe the South Carolina game is the only game you'll be able to get a true test of just how good this defense is.
Texter says, how about them Gamecocks, 9 sacks, 2 touchdowns on defense? Clem sucks defense is like the Biden administration immigration policy. Go Gamecocks. That says, love Tom.
All caps, by the way.
Thank you. Well, love Tom. How about that?
He has started with a love lately.
He also says OU is in the SEC, the best conference in football. To quote my all-time favorite movie, Call Me a Nerd. I don't give a rip what you think about that. I believe OU and Texas are quoting Lord of the Rings. I think we made a mistake leaving the Shire. Pippin.
Oh,
they're going to be getting back on the phone like, hey, Big 12, can we come back? Because it was fun kicking everybody's butts over there. It's not fun getting beat over here.
Welcome to the SEC, says Diesel.
When we come back, Cole, the obligatory have to mention them. Carolina Panthers, awful performance on Sunday, yesterday. Should they go back to Bryce Young? Oh, that's next on the Fan Upstate. Well, all you smart you-know-whats saying that the Carolina Panthers tried the Andy Dalton experiment, that it didn't work. Should they go back to Bryce Young? Well, guess what? They did on Sunday. He went 2 for 2 for -4 yards. -4. How does that happen? Bryce Young.
Go backwards.
Yeah. Andy Dalton stinks. Bryce Young stinks. Andy went 11 for 16 for 93 yards and 2 picks. Cole, we were wondering earlier this year, like, what if the Andy Dalton experiment works and they win a couple of football games and they push themselves out of a top 5 pick? I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Have to worry about that, do we?
Yeah, we're not going to have to worry about that. 40-7 blowout loss to not even Jaden Daniels' Washington Commanders, to Marcus Mariota's Washington Commanders. Daniels went out early in this game. Mariota just carved them up, like we all thought Marcus Mariota would be coming out of college. Like, the Carolina Panthers just turned everybody into world beaters.
They suck.
I don't know.
There's no other way to put it.
They suck, right? Like, I know that they've been decimated by injuries. I know that key pieces are going out, but this is systemic at this point.
Well, maybe Diesel, it's not about Andy Dalton sucking or Bryce Young sucking. Maybe it's just more of this team as a whole sucks, and it goes to show that, yeah, you have to have a good quarterback, but it goes to show that you have to have much more than that. And guess what? The Panthers don't have anything. They're just not a good football team.
Well, it's not just the team, it's the entire franchise.
Sure.
I mean, I guarantee you that the janitor misses a trash can every time he makes his rounds to go pick up garbage in the building.
Shots, baby.
Yeah.
I love it.
I mean, like, look, if you want to be I've always said, if you want to be a championship winning program or franchise, you have to be on point from the tippy top all the way to the very bottom. And I'm talking the people that make the lunches in the cafeteria, the janitors who pick up the trash, the guy who unclogs the toilet at the end of the day. All those people have to be doing their job, because when somebody walks into there, they don't want to be thinking about it. When Dave Canales goes to the bathroom, he doesn't need to be trying to unclog the toilet, figuring that out. He needs to be thinking about how to beat the Washington Commanders next week, right? So there's a cancer in this franchise, Cole. I mean, consider the fact that the spread was 10.5 points, and that Washington covered the spread by 29.5.
Yeah, that was the easiest bet I've ever placed yesterday, just for the record. But I think, Diesel, it goes to show that, like, the way, and you and I have talked about this before, and I believe in April when the draft happened, you actually said you were opposed of the way it's done now. In my opinion, this goes to show, Diesel, that the way that the NFL wants teams to rebuild by sucking and having the first pick and being able to get a quarterback, that just doesn't always work. Sometimes it does. Jaden Daniels has absolutely been a savior for Washington. However, Carolina, it goes to show that Carolina needs so much more than the quarterback.
That's why, last week when we talked about how should all American sports be structured when it comes to their salary caps and what they do, I'm for changing the way that the NFL does its salary cap. The cap is this. If you go over it, there's a luxury tax. That luxury tax money gets split among the teams who don't go over the luxury tax, and then they get to go spend that money to find players to make their team better. I mean, when you rebuild through the draft, Cole, and you only get, 5-6 picks in a draft, and maybe 3 of those guys or maybe 2 of those guys are going to turn into valuable players for you, now you're putting so much on hoping things go well.
You are. And it's a long shot. It's a long shot that things are going to go well right
60%
now.
of first-round quarterbacks bust.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of bust, how'd you do in your upset pick this past weekend?
Busted.
We're going to get into that. But first, Daily Dewey. Dewey wants to chime in. 844-FAN phone. What's up, Dewey?
First of all, the Carolina Panthers should be kicked out of Charlotte. They're horrible.
Agreed.
Bryce Young should go back to college, and Andy Dalton should retire. Dave Canales should be fired, and Shane Beamer should be the coach.
Okay, what's your second of all?
And Y'all owed Shane Beamer an apology. They beat the mighty Oklahoma.
Thanks, Dewey.
Thank
We'll
you,
get
Dewey.
into upset picks.
I don't think he had a second of all.
I think
he had
he
to
ran it
scramble.
all into one, and I
Yeah.
caught him off guard.
I think he had to
And
scramble.
I like it. I like it. All right. How'd you do this past weekend? We'll get into the results of the Upset Picks Challenge next. Well, you may have done well. You may not have done well, but that's my best NC State Wolf Howl Diesel as I banked my entire upset pick future on NC State. And guess what? NC State, they showed up for me, man. They showed up. Can you believe it? I finally hit. All you Tolos out there who badmouthed me all week long last week, 71307 is the way you can put your apology note into the system. I'm accepting them starting right now. Go Wolfpack.
So you're saying Tolos should now look to you for the best and brightest upset picks?
Absolutely not.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you needed a 14-point fourth quarter performance to hit and to win.
Yep.
NC State on the road, that's a shocker to me, man. I thought Cal had this one in the bag. I thought Cal, especially coming off the performance that they had against Miami a couple of weeks ago, would be a team to beat in this game. And good God, did they? When was that final touchdown scored?
I thought Cal,
6 minutes to play.
When Cal was up the way they were, I was worried. I was like, crap. I agree with what you just said. I was like, I'm toast. There's no way we're done. But then NC State pulled back, man. Just a freaking dogfight for NC State. By the way, only Diesel, my second win of the season. It took, what week are we in now? 8 weeks?
That was week 8.
So
we're going into week 9.
It took 8 weeks. And a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then, Diesel. I found my nut 2 out of every 8 weeks right now. I'm winning. 2 out of every 8 weeks, I'm getting my upset pick right. I picked South Carolina against Kentucky, and the only other one all season long, NC State over Cal. How'd you do on your upset pick? 71307. Start your text with the word fan. Diesel, I'm pleased to tell you that on Friday, while you were out, I just did everything I could to will the Tolos, and we broke the record. We have an all-time high entries for 1 week. And I don't know about all time, but for yours, for the time that you and I have been on the air together, an all-time high of upset pick entries.
Can I get another awoo for that?
Oh,
werewolves in London. No, I don't want to talk about the upset picks challenge, Cole, because I you know what? It's my fault. It's my fault. The football gods are laughing in my face right now. I chose not to take Arizona State last week. So 2 weeks ago, I chose not to take them. I looked at them. I thought long and hard. I originally said, you know what? I think I'm going to go with this game. It would have been worth 5 points or so. And then I got greedy. And then I got greedy. And then I took Coastal Carolina in a road game against James Madison on a Thursday, and they got their asses stomped. And then I said, you know what? I'm gonna fix this. I'm gonna offer up something to the football gods, and they are gonna look kindly upon me. They're gonna smile upon me. The Sun Devils are gonna conjure something, and they're gonna get a dub this weekend. And then they crap the bed.
They crapped the bed.
Cincinnati.
Yeah,
it's Cincinnati. Like I understand they were 4-2 coming into this game. Arizona State was 5-1, but it's Cincinnati. Scott Satterfield's offenses are boring. I watched Scott Satterfield's offenses for years.
Wesley
be boring. And then I mean they had a 19-13 performance the week prior against UCF, and then by God they came out and they just shut Arizona State down.
Wesley Roberts on the Facebook stream says, I believe I owe you an apology, Cole. Well, Wesley, get in line. So do about 45 other Tolos out there. DB says, I'm almost done with the standings, so we'll have the standings, Diesel, momentarily.
Ow.
I like it. Also, Wes, this is a pretty good one. How about this? Wesley says, what are the chances my upset pick scores 44 points and I still lose? That's rough. JD's at 2 in a row. He says he's coming for the streak. He'll be interested to see where he falls. 27. That's not bad, JD. 27 points right now is pretty good, man. That's really good.
The one problem with this, Cole, is you told Amazon guy that he wasn't going to hit on a pick for the rest of the season a few weeks ago, and then he hit. He was with you. He took NC State with you.
Well, he copied me.
So Amazon guy is back on the board. Look what you've done. Now he's going to go on another heater, and Amazon guy is going to finish this friggin' thing with like 75 points.
So Amazon guy didn't hit for like 5 weeks in a row, and then we picked the same game and we both hit. That's my luck.
Texter says, I picked Arizona State last week and this week. It's definitely your fault why they lost this week. You know what? I'll take the shame. Texter. It's my fault.
Oh, man. Let's see. Chris Arnett says, I rode the state train with you, Cole. Well, Chris, choo, baby, we hit this week. Amazon guy says NC State, let's go. Look, I don't know, Diesel, if NC State is a good team. I still don't think they're a good team.
No, they're not.
But guess what? We'll take our winnings however we can
get them.
But
Dabo Swinney pump them up as world beaters even after toasting them.
That's right. Yeah, he did. This is my second win. How many have you hit?
I've hit 2. I've hit twice.
I was thinking you've hit 3 times.
Yeah, I hit 2 weeks in a row. Something like week 4 and 5, I think, is when I hit 2 times in a row. And then I've been ice cold ever since.
You know, it's funny. I did not know that you and I were going to be neck and neck, but you said it a minute ago. We might be neck and neck. We might be.
JD on the stream says, I'm on an upset pick heater, but it's come at a cost to my fantasy team losing. Apparently, I can only win in fantasy or get an upset pick, not both. Well, you know what? The football gods giveth, the football gods taketh away.
That's right. Matt J on the text line chiming in, and he's getting his dub. Matt J says, first ever hit, picked Old Dominion over Texas State. Let's go.
How about that?
You and I both talked about that game, remember? Old Dominion and Texas State?
Yeah, Texas State have turned into world beaters this year. Texas State, the crazy thing is, Cole, and I get it, that like the state of Texas is massive. You've got so many huge football programs in that state that even though Texas State is kind of an afterthought in the state of Texas football, people don't realize that Texas State is a gigantic school. It's got like 40,000 students. It's huge.
I don't even know where it's located.
By comparison, it's in San Marcos.
Oh, wow.
It's huge. The campus is beautiful. Like it's in a recruiting hotbed. They should be really, really good. The problem is you got Texas, you got Texas A&M, you got Texas Tech, you got SMU, all that in the Baylor, all that in the same state. Oh yeah, and everybody else is coming to try to take your players also. So LSU's coming in and taking your recruits. Oklahoma's coming in. Oklahoma State's coming in. Everybody's coming in to take your recruits. It's like, well, man, Texas State picking up the leftovers out of those schools, and it's like it's understandable why Texas State has been a bad football program for a long time. But man, they came out of the woodworks this year. And I mean, they were getting, think about this, Cole, they were getting, whether it be Mountain West or Pac-12 invites, they actually had to post a graphic saying that they turned down an invitation to another conference. We don't know if that's Mountain West. We don't know if that's Big 12. But man, talk about getting hot at the right time and then crapping the bed against Old Dominion.
How about this? Did a little research. Do you want to guess how many upsets there were this weekend in college football? How many upsets you think?
I'm going to say, since if we're doing FBS, there's roughly 65 games. Not everybody can be a world beater, Texter. I'm going to say out of those 65 games, I'm going to say 20 of them were upsets.
30.
What?
30.
What?
Here we go. New Mexico State. Here's the biggest. I'm not going to read every one of them, but the biggest upsets. New Mexico State was a 12.5-point dog to La Tech.
Mm-hmm.
They beat La Tech. Maine was a 12.5 dog to Villanova.
What's their mascot?
Maine Machines. Bears.
Yeah, close. What color are you wearing?
Black
Bears. Yeah, the Maine Black Bears.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You're such a mascot nerd. Villanova's back to a basketball school. They lost. Stony Brook and Towson. Okay. Towson, sorry.
Tigers.
Here's one that you might recognize. James Madison. You and I talked about this one as well.
Yeah.
They were 10-point favorites.
Uh-huh.
Georgia Southern won 28-14 over JMU.
Was it a dead-on 10-point favorites?
Dead on. Was it not you that I thought you were going to – maybe it was me. We talked about this game as a potential to take in the Upset Picks Challenge.
We did look at it. Yeah. We did look at it. I thought James Madison, had figured something out and had gotten some form of consistency on offense. I mean, they look really good on offense from time to time, but then they crap the bed the next week. So it's like you don't really know what James Madison offense is going to show up.
Wesley says, we have officially entered a time of despair. I am only picking teams getting 20-plus points. Cole has proven anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
That's true.
Kevin Durant. No, not Kevin Durant. Kevin Garnett.
It's true. Yeah, I have proven that. Old Dominion, Texas State was a 9.5-point upset. Tennessee Tech versus Western Illinois Diesel, 9.5-point. Samford and Mercer. How about this? A little SoCon action, 9.5-point. NC State Cal, obviously the one that I took. It's listed as well. UTEP FIU. FIU was favored by 7. Michigan State was 7-point dogs to Iowa. Beat Iowa by 12. And then another one that I looked at. Southern Cal, they suck. They lost again to Maryland. Maryland 29-28 over USC. USC was favored by 6.5.
Yeah.
And I know this is not the segment for it, but write this down, Tolos. If you are looking to continue to watch USC reel, Rutgers is a big dog this weekend to USC, and Rutgers has only lost 1 game.
Rutgers
so write
is a good
that down.
Football team.
Write that down, Tolos. Rutgers over USC potentially for your upset pick.
Greg Schiano's back in Rutgers, right?
I don't know. It's a good
I believe
question.
He is.
Illinois
says,
sorry. Go ahead. You go ahead.
Grandpa Bucky, first hit of the year. He took Maryland. I looked at that game too.
Over
Grandpa
USC.
Bucky.
Yeah. That's bad, man. USC's reeling right now. I mean, just reeling. And in the Michigan game, I do believe you and I talked about Illinois, Michigan several times, looked at it. Baylor, Texas Tech. Texas Tech was a 4.5-point favorite over Baylor. Baylor won 59-35. Not even close. No defense. And what I did not expect, Rutgers, who we just talked about, who lost their first game, I believe, lost to UCLA, and they were 4.5-point favorites.
Madcraft throwing shade, I think. He says, I imagine Diesel has a random room in his house like The Conjuring, except it's just filled with mascot heads Lee Corso wore. Madcraft, you don't realize how badly I want that in my life.
That'd be awesome.
To have that would be
That'd
awesome.
Be awesome, man. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I'll just take the bobblehead version. I don't even need the mascot head version because I don't have room for that.
You wouldn't have scored a ton, Diesel, but I do believe we had a few Tolos who took Georgia, Texas, as well as Tennessee, Bama. Bama was favored by 3.5. Texas was favored by 4.5.
We haven't even gotten to the debacles in those games yet.
No, not yet. Debacles. I mean, I don't know. Are you considering throwing bottles on field a debacle?
Yeah.
Or is that now legal?
That's a debacle. It's only a debacle if it doesn't work, right? If it doesn't get your call overturned.
And we're going to, at 6 o'clock, I'm glad you brought that up. At 6 o'clock in that very segment, we're going to dive deep into the rest of the games this weekend. But we do have a few minutes, Diesel, before we have to talk to David Hood. I'm glad you brought that up. I'll make you choose between Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee, Bama, of which one surprised you the most.
Oh, it's got to be Georgia, Texas,
Me
right?
too.
Like we thought Texas was an offensive juggernaut, that they could roll over anybody, that they could score with anybody, that they could change out quarterbacks and be successful no matter what. And then it just turned out to not be the case. I mean, Texas was completely inept on offense in that game, completely inept.
I would definitely pick that one as the one that surprised me. I thought that, I said all week, I thought that game would be very close. It was obviously 30-15. If you would have told me one of those teams would have won by 15, I would have said Texas. I would not have thought Georgia would have won by 15. However, we talked about it in the very first segment with South Carolina. I guess you can say the same thing here as a welcome to the SEC, Texas. I mean, we literally said, and I said on the show Friday, I thought Texas was by far the best team in college football. And they just, to your point, looked inept at times.
Texas had their necessary roughness welcome to football moment against Georgia this weekend. I mean, in the SEC, just because you have a bad performance, just because you don't show up one week, doesn't mean you're down for the count, doesn't mean that your team is completely hopeless, inept of having a good offense or defense for the rest of the season. I mean, Texas got blown out. They got embarrassed. I mean, they looked awful in that football game. I know
Four turnovers,
the score was relatively close, and the referees did everything they could possibly do to help them out. I mean, Kirby Smart, we've all heard that audio of Kirby Smart saying they tried to rob us. They tried to, turn calls around to give them an opportunity to score. Like, that was just an ugly performance from the referees in that game. It was an ugly showing from the Texas fan base. We're back. Are you? You're back to throwing stuff onto the field. It was just an ugly look in Austin.
How do you have 4 turnovers though against Georgia and still only lose by 15? Like, they didn't run the ball. Texas could not run the football. And let's be honest, Quinn Ewers didn't look great. I mean, he didn't look great. He had got pulled. Arch Manning came in, didn't throw a ton, but they just didn't look like Texas we've seen all season. And again, Georgia's defensive front, Georgia's defense as a whole is very, very good. We all knew that. But man, the better quarterback looked like Carson Beck, didn't it?
Yeah. Wesley Roberts, what you messaged on the stream, it's funny, and there's some truth there. He goes, speaking of debacles and Lee Corso, at what point is it elder abuse to keep putting him on the air?
Oh God, he's not wrong, is he?
No, he's not wrong. I mean, look, Lee a couple of years ago, I think immediately following his stroke, or it might have been during COVID, I can't remember which, they would have him pre-record some of his segments, and I think that's probably what they need to start doing again with Lee. I mean, they set it up to where it was Lee's at home, he's vacationing, and the Home Depot is remodeling his house and all that stuff. It feels like that's where they need to go. Limit his appearances on the show.
Like fire him. I mean,
for years, it's like 3-4 years now, we've been looking at it and saying, man, this feels like it's got to be the last year for Corso.
He's got to go.
It's sad. It's sad to say, because Corso is an institution on College Game Day. I don't want to see it, but I also don't want Lee out there embarrassing himself. I mean, his family is watching that. His family is watching him stammer and murmur through his words. I mean,
I think
at some point, you got to quit trotting him out there like a mascot.
Yeah.
And making him go through that. Enough is enough.
Here's the audio you were referencing with Kirby Smart.
Nobody believed us. And then they tried to rob us with calls in this place. And these guys are so resilient. You know what I mean? We talked about intent. What was our intent when we walked on the field? Our intent was not to take pictures, not to do all the superstar stuff. Our intent, our intent was to eat. Our intent was to come eat and be hungry. I'm not interested in all the bells and whistles. What I want is a team that fights their ass off, and they did tonight.
He's not wrong. Like, I love that. You can hate Kirby. You can love Kirby Diesel, but he's not wrong. They came in with a very business mind approach.
They did.
They took care of business, man. They really did.
Texter says, Game Hens used to throw bottles at walk-on Hunter Renfro. Interesting.
You got to throw something, I guess. You got to throw whatever you got.
When we come back, Cole, let's talk Clemson Tigers against the Virginia Cavaliers with David Hood of TigerNet. Was he completely psyched with the performance? Probably not, but we'll find out what he has to say next. Clemson 48, Virginia 31 in front of a home crowd here in Clemson, South Carolina. The question is, was it actually a dominant performance all the way across the field and across the throughout the game? We bring on David Hood of TigerNet right now to talk about that very thing. David, a 21-point Cavalier fourth quarter. The word finish apparently not in Clemson's vocabulary in the last 15 minutes of that game. The easy answer is to say Virginia is 4-2. They're a good football team. But do you believe Clemson still has some glaring deficiencies if they were capable of giving up 3 scores in the fourth quarter against Virginia?
The Clemson was going to throw out there for string against somebody, then yeah, there's some glaring deficiencies, because that's what was out there. Basically, you've got, Ryan Strazier out there, or Brandon Strazier out there, giving up a long pass, and some other guys that usually don't see the field. I mean, that's what Clemson does. They got a big lead and put some kids in and gave up a couple of big plays. And next thing you know, Dabo's got Kay Klubnik back in there throwing a touchdown pass to TJ Moore, and then more kids come in. And, when Clemson has been good, that's been their MO, that Dabo really doesn't care about the final score as long as he gets guys in the football game and gets some experience. And you had some kids in there who have very limited snaps. And Virginia just kept coming. Musket, the quarterback that came in for Virginia, he's an experienced guy. He's been around, and Virginia kept trying to score. So good for them. That's what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to stop. So, glaring deficiencies, no. Dabo just doesn't keep the starters in.
David, when you went into the game Saturday with a list, whether it be 2 or 3 things that you were wanting to see out of this Clemson football team after the game was over, did you check those off that you did see what you wanted to see, or do you still have some questions, or not just, maybe not questions, but some things that you want to see Clemson check the box on?
Yeah, I told myself going in, I really wanted to see how Clemson did against Virginia's rush attack. That Calandria, it could be dangerous. He got loose on a couple of plays, but you look at the end, and Virginia still rushed for either 2.8 or 2.9 yards per rush. I think 29 for like 64 yards or something like that. That's fantastic. You wanted to see if the offense just kept rolling, and they kind of did that thing again where they kind of sleepwalk a little bit through the first quarter, and they kept rolling. And I really wanted to see them get some pressure on defense, and they did that too. And there were signs of life out there. You got a little chippy at times, and they really checked all the boxes. It's like we did, Grace and Man and I, TigerNet, we do a podcast. And really, if there's one question that you have on this team right now, it's defensive depth.
Talking right now to David Hood of TigerNet.com. Definitely look up his website. Look him up on social media as well. From here on out, David, the schedule as a whole gets considerably tougher. Louisville, Virginia Tech, ranked Pitt, and South Carolina on the schedule. Cole and I, we like to look for elements where a team gets stressed moments, right? How are they going to perform in the biggest games, in the biggest situations? Knowing the guys on this roster that the way that you do, how do you believe those individuals will handle those stress moments, which we haven't seen them face on the field very often, not since the Georgia game at least?
I guess it kind of remains to be seen. They've got I think a really nice test with Louisville to begin with at home, because Louisville, they play at Boston College this Friday night, but now they've got 2 losses in conference, and they have absolutely no room for error. If they lose at Boston College, well, that's it. They have no shot at an ACC championship. And look, with 2 losses, they may not have one anyway, considering Clemson has none, SMU has none, Miami has none. You don't know if those teams are going to lose 2. But Louisville knows that they are in desperation mode. I think that's going to be a great first test for them. Who knows if it's going to be a night game or a noon game? It's probably going to be one of the 2, right? Clemson doesn't get the 3:30 slot anymore. But I think that's going to be a great first test for them. And then they have that 2-game road trip that's really going to tell the tale for me. Virginia Tech playing a lot better. They suffered a really, ugly loss to Vanderbilt earlier in the year. They suffered a loss to Rutgers. They had that loss at Miami where you think maybe the officials intervened a little bit, but they've been playing better. And then how about Pitt with former Alabama quarterback Eli Holstein? They're playing great. It's going to be a nice 3-game stretch for Clemson right there heading into those final 2 against the Citadel in South Carolina.
You know, it was a big day in Clemson, David, for several reasons, but Tony Elliott being in town was probably the biggest. I don't know if you guys specifically got to hear from Dabo about, him and Tony talking pregame. I know he asked everybody to get their picture and then leave him alone and let him have some time to talk. But from what you can tell, what did it mean for Tony Elliott? And also on the flip side of that, did you feel that as if Tony Elliott regrets that decision in any way?
Oh, no. Tony was ready for a head coaching job. And, I think it shows his growth that he even said earlier in the week that it really wasn't about him coming back to Clemson. It was really about his football team and getting them ready to play. And that's what a head coach is supposed to do. And he did not wax romantic or poetic about a return. His wife and two kids, Tamika, AJ, and Ace, they came back with him. They kind of got to do the whole fan thing and go see some people that they know. But Tony stayed with his team, spent some time with Dabo there pregame. We got our photographer, Merrill Mann, got a great photo of Tony spending some time with David Seville there at midfield. And then it was just kind of like he did his hat tip to CJ Spiller. And then it was time to go play. He really, didn't come in early. They flew in and to Greenville. They stayed at a Greenville hotel. He didn't come in on Friday night to come see anybody. It really shows his growth as a coach, that it truly was all about the team for him. And if they give him time, you can see that there are pieces there for him to have a quality program. It's still just pieces, but they're there.
David, slow, methodical climb up the AP top 25 for Clemson right now. They've moved from 10 to 9. What were your initial thoughts when you saw that just one spot jump there? Do you believe that was completely justified? Do you think that the AP voters are looking at, the weak competition? Are they looking at, more at the defensive performance in that game? What was your thoughts?
Yeah, probably much more the schedule. Clemson, has really played one team with a pulse, and they got beat. Otherwise, it's kind of been a bunch of teams that just aren't going to, really register on the radar. That's why this next 3-game stretch is so important for them, because Louisville is capable of pulling off an upset. Virginia Tech is playing better. Pitt is undefeated. South Carolina is playing a whole lot better. Went out to Oklahoma and won. But for them, it's really not about the AP poll. It just truly isn't. It's, for them, and it's not even so much about the college football rankings that are going to come out on November I think it's the 5th, that first set of rankings that are going to come out, because for them, it's going to be about winning the ACC. That's their path to the playoff, is coming out or, playing really well and coming out and losing a close game to an undefeated Miami team or somebody like that in an ACC playoff. So for them right now, it's all about the schedule. They haven't played anybody. Now they're still blowing people out, playing really well. I think I saw somebody on Twitter say that Clemson is the most proven, unproven team in America. And that sounds about right.
David Hood, TigerNet.com, joining us right here on the Fan Upstate. David, you've watched a lot of Clemson football, and this year, with what you're seeing with this Clemson team in 2024, as well as what you've seen in the past, how do you measure what we just talked about, what you just hit on? How do you measure if a team really is getting better week by week and improving from that Georgia loss? Or how do you look and see a team that just is playing the teams that are on their schedule and may be a victim of their opponents and really aren't improving in your mind?
Well, you just go back to, are they people laugh at Coach Sweeney when he says this, but, you play against Clemson. All coaches say that. You play to a standard, and, are they kind of playing to an upper standard? And if this was a team that beat NC State, 34-31 on the last second field goal, had to hang on to beat Stanford, had to, come back late in the third quarter to beat Wake Forest, then you go, man, there's questions. But this team's kind of going out really early and just annihilating teams. And so you go, okay, so not only are they really good, but they're just continuing to, to play their offense, to play their defense. Somebody asked me, how does this team compare to some of the playoff teams? Man, I'd really love to see them play somebody really good now that they've kind of got this mojo going. If I had to tell you one glaring difference, it would be defensive line. You know, you just can't compare what you've had with Dexter Lawrence, Christian Wilkins, Cleveland Farrell, Austin Bryant. Some of those dogs to what they have today. The guys today are good. They're not that group. That to me is probably the biggest difference between this team and some of those playoff teams.
David, we heard, I think it was a week ago, 2 weeks ago, that the SEC and the Big Ten are potentially looking at a mid-season challenge that would, who knows what that could look like, right? It could be 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2, or some other, format. How much would it benefit the ACC to partner with the Big 12 in a similar fashion, in your opinion, to play, for example, for Clemson to play an Iowa State or a BYU, which are top 2 teams in the Big 12 right now, mid-season?
I think that'd be a lot of fun. And, it kind of gets you out of that doldrums of kind of having to play somebody that, nobody wants to see. And, I think that this is all a precursor to what we're going to see a decade from now. I really do. I think that a decade from now, you're going to see the top, like we've talked about before, the top 48 are going to be together, and the schedules are going to be a little bit different. And, you're going to see some of these exciting matchups week to week. And, for everybody that hates it and they love the regional rivalries, and, I hear Clemson fans all the time, man, I just want to keep playing, Georgia Tech and NC State and some of those traditional rivalries. But, man, what we're seeing this weekend with South Carolina going to Oklahoma, with Texas hosting Georgia. Texas has got to go to Vanderbilt this week. Oregon and Ohio State playing a conference game. Man, some of this is really fun. It is fun to see. And, you don't have to see Oregon beat up on Arizona State or Washington State or somebody like that. I think, some of this cross-country stuff is a lot of fun. And for Clemson and the Big 12, you know what? That'd be a nice fit.
David, when we talk about Cade Klubnik's success this season, I mean, just absolutely taking care of the football. His touchdown numbers are up compared to his turnovers. He's playing really well. If I tell you the biggest factor is the offensive line and the protection that he has, would you tell me that there's a better factor out there that would attribute to Cade's success in 2024?
I don't know that you could say a bigger factor. I think the fact that the wide receivers are healthy is probably right there with the offensive line, because he does have time, but now he's got some guys to throw it to. You get Salato healthy, sure. Antonio Williams has taken his game to another level. Now, he hasn't had Tyler Brown out there, but adding a Wesco, adding TJ Moore and kind of that threat is also a big deal, because if you look at what Clemson's offense was, they were not able to push the ball down the field. Antonio's maybe not so much a down the field guy as he is a guy that can take something short and take it long. But adding some of this downfield passing has made a big difference right there with the offensive line. And you heard Tony Elliott talking about it this week, that, what they saw was a lot of explosive plays, and they wanted to keep those in front of them. And he said, kind of make them throw underneath. And he said, then we just didn't do a very good job of covering that. So, I would put it right there. I'd say the two biggest things are that offensive line and having wide receivers that are able to go out and make plays.
David, it's incredible how the quarterback conversation has changed since the beginning of the season, since the offseason. We still had a lot of question marks about Cade Klubnik, and then we said behind him, we're in a tough spot potentially with Vizina and Pierman, who should be quarterback number 2 on that depth chart. From the experience that he's gotten this year, and it certainly helps that Clemson is putting up 500 yards of offense, and he's getting a lot of game time reps. But behind the scenes, how have you seen his actual game reps change the way Vizina has looked in practice?
Yeah, well, we don't get to go to practice. That's probably the biggest thing, is we haven't been to a practice since August. So, I don't really know how he's doing in practice anymore. I do know that I stayed behind in the press box Saturday to kind of write, and Vizina came back out with a trainer and was working on different routes and throwing things, and he's continuing to try to get better. I've actually liked what I've seen out of Christopher Vizina. I do. I think that, in some of the limited opportunities, he's been good. I didn't know if there had been an injury to Klubnik. Would it be Pierman or Vizina? I know he's second on the depth chart, but now that we've kind of seen him in game action, you realize Christopher Vizina probably is the true number 2. And, it's going to be interesting now, because now you look at the rest of the schedule and you go, is he going to get any snaps maybe until the Citadel?
Very well could be. David Hood, before we let you go, when you look at, you just said it a few moments ago, when you look at the remaining schedule that Clemson has, obviously some very important games coming up. We know that the meat of the schedule for this team is on the back end. But what do you want to see from Clemson before they do host Louisville on November the 2nd? Or would your answer be just the exact same thing we've seen thus far?
No, I just think that for Clemson, it's going to be all about getting Bryant Wesco healthy. He's been battling an ankle issue. Could he have gone this week? I've heard he was at practice and was able to do some things. And, if they had really needed him, maybe he could have gone. But getting him healthy and back out in that wide receiver rotation, Tyler Brown, another guy they got to get kind of healthy. They've had some guys on the offensive line, Colin Sadler, that's been dinged up. I think for them, it's just taken these, 12 or 13 days and getting them healthy. And then they just come back out and keep rolling and doing what they're doing.
David, great stuff as always, man. Sure to appreciate you, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, guys. Always appreciate it.
Diesel, what do Clemson and South Carolina fans both do if they're both on a bye? There's no trash to be talked. I mean, what are you going to do this weekend, Gamecock and Tiger fans? I mean, are you going to go deer hunting? I mean, what do you do? I mean, there's nothing to talk about in terms of your bread and butter, your Clemson Tigers. Your tailgate's not going to happen. You can't talk trash about the Gamecocks losing because that's not going to happen either.
I'm sure somebody's going to call somebody a tater. Somebody's going to call somebody a coot. Somebody's going to say that New Spring funds everything going on with the football. It's when you just bring out the oldies but the goldies, right? Like, you've all heard these insults. You've said these insults hundreds of times. Doesn't make them not fun to throw around, but genuinely asking here, who had a sense of humor in the scheduling offices to say, you know what, we're going to give both of these teams the week off at the same time. And you're not even going to get to watch the other team play and then trash that performance.
Yeah, and the radio show hosts say thanks, right?
Right.
And by the way, before we run to our Daily Wires, Diesel, Madcraft has an issue with what I said about Corso. He says, you're telling me – by the way, on the stream, if you're not on the stream, you need to be. Madcraft's on the YouTube stream. He said, you're telling me that Corso didn't make game day? Yeah, 10 years ago he did. You probably want them to pull Tiger off the tour card too. Going to respect the pioneers of the game. Quite honestly, if they can do that for the president, okay, we're not going to make it political. However, no, I stand by what I said. It's time for Corso to go. It is time.
That could be a segment in and of itself. Madcraft has an issue.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. Texter says, geez, Diesel, their backups were out there. Come on, dude. Look, Texter, we're trying to figure out ways to prod and poke and figure out different angles to ask questions of our guests here. What do you want me to do? Say, hey, how big of a smile did that win give you? That's a dumb question. Yeah. That's a crap question.
Write that question down. I'm going to ask that next time.
So look, we're trying to find ways to find little nuggets of information from David Hood. He is the absolute best. And so, you go down an avenue of questioning, and sometimes, Texter, here's a little truth for you. Sometimes you ask asinine questions hoping to be told that you're wrong because it makes compelling radio.
Learn something new today, Texter. Yeah. Daily Wire is getting you updated on the top stories in sports next. Our Tolos are on the edge of their seat, waiting to know what the top stories in sports are right now. What happened this weekend? We call it the Daily Wires, the Daily Buzz. Getting you buzzed up on what's going on around the sports world. We mentioned it earlier, Diesel, but Texas, Texas Athletics, as the entire department, will be fined $250K. Some students may have their big ticket revoked for the remainder of the academic year after fans in the student sections threw water bottles and other things, beer cans, onto the field during Saturday's 30-15 loss against Georgia.
God, how many times have we seen this now? I remember there was an event, 2-3 years ago at Tennessee. I think it was Ole Miss, Tennessee, I believe, and that's when somebody on the Ole Miss staff got hit with a golf ball or something on the back of the head. It's ugly every single time it happens. You know, God, you hate to see it. You hate to see it in big time events like that. It just makes the sport look bad.
How about Sark? Like, stop. Walking over there during the game. That was pretty cool. Pretty odd.
Did they put Sark on the PA to make people stop?
They should have. They could have handed him a mic and said, hey, man, go at it. South Carolina safety Nick Imawari has been named the SEC Co-Defensive Player of the Week. Defensive tackle Tonka Hemingway has been selected as the SEC Co-Defensive Lineman of the Week.
What's with this crap?
You gotta have co.
Make him the Defensive Player of the Week or don't. Stop with this garbage.
There's too many good players out there, Diesel.
We're co-parents. No, you're just parents.
Co-coordinators. How about that?
God.
Locally over the weekend, not a good weekend, Diesel, for those local teams in the upstate. Stop me when you hear when a local team won a football game. Furman fell to Western Carolina 52-20. Wofford fell to Chattanooga 37-5. North Greenville defeated Erskine 52-35. So there's one. Limestone lost to Wingate 38-12, and Anderson lost to Emory and Henry 34-3.
You know, I was at the Western Carolina Furman game on Saturday. Shout out to the way Furman showed out for FanFest and for homecoming. It was awesome to be there. It was an awesome scene. The stands kind of filled in right before kickoff. And that's when kind of the good vibes fell apart at Furman. Western Carolina threw a huge touchdown pass on like the third play from scrimmage, and it was basically over from there. Furman shot themselves in the foot a couple times in that game.
Not a good weekend for our local teams. The Dodgers and the Yankees punched their ticket to the World Series game. The 7-game series will begin on Friday in L.A. If you want to get a ticket, you can, but you're going to have to pay. Resale tickets for Game 1 at Dodger Stadium range from $1,095 for seats by the first base foul pole to $37,000 to sit right behind home plate. That's before the fees and the taxes and everything else you have to pay. We had
do the fees and the taxes go up because the ticket is more expensive?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Is it like relative to the ticket price, or is it still the same flat fee?
It's a good question. We had Michael Duarte, I had Michael Duarte on Friday, Diesel, NBCLA Michael Duarte, who we've had on the show before.
Yeah.
He was standing in the Mets dugout doing the interview with me on Friday.
Awesome.
We'll have to get him back on because the team that he covers, the LA Dodgers, are in the World Series. Appreciate him making time for that interview on Friday. High school football news, Dominique Odom of Blacksburg was awarded the Fan Upstate Player of the Week for Week 8 because of his performance on Friday. He'll be on with us tomorrow, as we will be live tomorrow, Diesel, downtown Spartanburg.
Yeah.
It is Morgan Square Madness. You and I will be there downtown, USC Upstate. It's going to be madness tomorrow. If you're not busy, if you're getting off work in time, come out. It's going to be a fantastic event. We'll tell you more about it later in the show.
I'm already trying to build in my excuses for why I'm not going to do well in the shooting challenge.
Free throw contest.
Yeah, I mean, it's outside, weird sight lines, not used to being in the gym.
That ball was kind of too bouncy and too much air in the ball.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'll start making a list. We mentioned it earlier. Our Carolina Panthers did not fare well yesterday. 40-7 beating by Marcus Mariota.
Awful.
I mean, good God. I mean, not even Jaden Daniels. And then Diesel, every Thursday we do what's called the welfare check. Well, guess what? The firings have begun. Utah offensive coordinator Andy Ludwig, gone. Well, he stepped away, Okay, stepped down. Oklahoma Sooners,
Right
offensive
before he was
coordinator Seth Littrell, gone. Announced Sunday when you lose to Carolina, somebody's getting fired. East Carolina fired coach Mike Houston, gone. We talked about that. He's been on our hot seat list. And athletic director John Gilbert said a change is needed to move the program forward. We have high expectations, and those expectations aren't being met.
Please let Sean Clark be next.
Oh,
Please let Sean
God,
Clark be next.
Diesel.
I'm there.
No.
I'm there.
And then lastly, Deshaun Watson, what a terrible injury yesterday. Ruptured his Achilles tendon, out for the season. What's worse than the injury, and I mean this, what's worse than the injury are the fans of Cleveland cheering when he's laying on the ground because of his Achilles. Jameis Winston had some thoughts on that post game. I'll get that audio for you later. But Diesel, that's just, I hate hearing that, cheering for a guy laying on the turf.
Yeah, it's not a good look. But what's worse than that, Cole, is watching the slow motion zoomed in footage of it actually happening. If you haven't searched for it yet, if you haven't Googled it, and you're into those weird injury videos, if you're one of those people,
I can't do
it. You just like, it's not like bones sticking out of the leg, kind of disgusting injury.
Yeah, that's tough.
But you can see like his Achilles tendon, when it snaps, you see the whole like calf muscle just ripple, and it's awful, man. It is hard to watch. When we come back, Cole, it is time for you, it is time for and it is time for all of the Tolos to overreact. It's Overreaction Monday. You got something you want to sound off about? 71307. Call in on the Renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone line. That's 844-326-3663. Be ready to overreact next. Every Monday, Cole, we give you Tolos, which means turn it on, leave it on, by the way, an opportunity at the 5 o'clock hour to sound off, to overreact, to throw whatever harebrained cockamamie pick and take you have at us to start this 5 o'clock hour. Think of this like a therapy session, you know? This is your opportunity to get it out and not let it carry on into your next week of sports fandom, because it can, Cole. It can build and build and build, and then you get into a situation where you have some explosive moment by the end of the season. So that's why we let you Tolos vent every Monday. We call it Overreaction Mondays. Here's your chance. 844-326-3663. That is the renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone number, or you can text us at 71307. Start your text with keyword fan.
Yeah.
What have you got? What kind of takes do you want to throw at us? I'll start with this one, Cole.
And real quick, not to be confused with Tolo Takeover, which is
Correct.
Tomorrow at 5. That's completely different. We need your overreactions today.
Yes, my first overreaction is that the NFL, with all of its rampant blowouts, is simply becoming unwatchable. Like half of these games are not worth spending your time on a Sunday, Cole.
Okay.
This was just this week. Broncos 33, Saints 10, blowout. Bills 34, Titans 10, blowout. Eagles 28, Giants 3. Commanders 40, Panthers 10. Steelers 37, Jets 15. Lions 47, Cowboys 9. Oh, wait, that was last week. But
that was last week.
Are everywhere in the NFL right now, Cole. The best of the best teams are staying good, but the bottom half of this league is falling off to the point where it's not even worth watching the bad performances. The NFL is set up so that all these teams should be relatively equal and should be playing tight football games, but the NFL is not even worth watching on a Sunday anymore, Cole.
That's an overreaction. That's for sure. That's a good one. I like that overreaction. My overreaction.
But am I wrong?
Yeah, you're wrong.
Why?
The NFL is not worth watching
Why
anymore.
should I watch 37-15? Why should I watch 40-10? Why should I watch 47-9? These blowouts are getting more frequent.
Well, just pick the games that aren't blowouts and watch those, and then you won't have the problem. I mean, Steelers-Jets last night was a good game. The Steelers did, toward the end of the game, the Steelers did, really put it on. Russell Wilson looked good.
I thought Devontae Adams was going to come in and fix everything.
Not in the first game. No, you got to give him time. But
it's his favorite target.
He
knows him well.
Blowouts. I'm not saying blowouts are the best thing in the world. I like blowouts when your team's on the right side of them, right? Everybody does. But I still think the NFL is very, very watchable. Even the teams that get blown out have good athletes, have good players. But the teams that you've listed, the Panthers, the Giants, Titans, Cowboys, Saints, not good teams this year. They're probably the worst of the worst in the NFL. Before we get to Harold from Greenville and Tom on the renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone, my overreaction, Diesel, South Carolina's defense is top 3 in the country. Absolutely dominant, absolutely elite. Top 3. The dudes on that defense, the depth that they have. I know statistically you can go pull all the stats and say, well, statistically they're not the top 3 defense. I think South Carolina's defense, my overreaction again, is that South Carolina has one of the best defenses in all of college football. I really do.
Well, it's funny because my second overreaction is not far off from that, and it stays right there, is that Oklahoma's Seth Luttrell isn't the only offensive coordinator who should have been fired after Saturday's South Carolina-Oklahoma game. Dowell Loggins needs to be left at the airport. That guy couldn't coach his way out of a wet paper bag on offense.
Fire him after the win.
Yeah, he's clearly got the dudes, right? He's got dudes on that offensive side of the football. They just can't put it together. Even when they play a clean football game, no turnovers on offense, less than, I think, 50 yards in penalties in that game, Cole. There's no excuse. There's no excuse when you've got a 21-point lead and you're playing free that you should not be able to put up points on the board. It was an ugly offensive performance.
I've been saying Dow Loggins all season should be fired. I've said last year that they should have moved on from Dow Loggins at the end of the season. He shouldn't be the coordinator in 2024. I really don't think he should be the coordinator in 2025. So I'm not going to push back there. Dow Loggins stinks. He's not good. That's really, that's a good overreaction. I like that. All right, let's go to the phones. 844-FAN phone, 844-326-3663. What is your overreaction from the sports weekend? We start with Harold in Greenville. Harold, what's your overreaction?
Well, you didn't hit the hey Diesel. By the way, good
Hey, Harold.
to talk to you again, man. It's been a while, ain't it? Yeah, Diesel knows me, Cole.
Okay.
I just turned your show on about a few weeks ago. I got tired of hearing all the politics. My heart can't take it no more. So I went back to sports. You got a great show. I love everything
Thank you,
about
Harold.
it.
We appreciate it.
It's Darryl Loggins all been gone. If it wasn't for that defense, they wouldn't have won the Oklahoma game. I mean the Oklahoma game, and they shouldn't have lost the Alabama game, and they shouldn't have lost the LSU game. Of course, that was their own doing. They shot themselves in the foot. But really, all sincerely, they ought to be 6-1 now. So, but I think you said something about one more game out of 4. Texas A&M coming. They're going to be like LSU, and if that open date weekend, and they come in and can't have enough diapers to change themselves like they did against Mississippi, I think Shane Beamer's going to be on the hot seat.
Ooh.
Because I can't listen. I hope they do get to 7, probably 6. I don't know who that's going to be. I don't think they'll beat Texas A&M because Texas A&M, started out weak, but they've really come on. I don't know what they are in the rankings right now, but it's they got between and who's that drink with? Diesel came from Appalachian State.
Uh-huh.
They can't beat him. He's got Gamecock numbers. I don't care if he's App State or Missouri. So they're going to have to find 2 games. I think it's going to take 7 to keep him. I mean, to stop, from being on the hot seat. But, hey, they ain't beat Wofford yet. I hate to say that. But anyway.
Thanks, Harold.
You hit the nail on the head, Diesel. You did. You said the whole thing.
Appreciate
you, Harold. It's awesome to hear Harold's voice. He was a regular caller to this station and had been for years. And, we hadn't heard from Harold for a while. Harold always comes with the facts. He always comes with a strong break. He took a political break from sports. But you know what, Harold, I'm glad that you're back. See, I'm glad you realized that politics and listening to politics and talking politics all the time
sucks.
Makes people miserable.
Yeah.
I mean, sports is fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it still makes people miserable, but usually for different reasons.
And Harold, get all the rest of those crazy maniacs that listen to political radio and bring them with you. Bring them with you. What's your overreaction? 71307. I said that the Gamecocks had the best defense, one of the best defenses in the country. There are some overreactions that we'll have to get to on the text line. Let's go to Tom, which I'm sure Tom has an overreaction or two. I believe that's in his name somewhere, Tom Overreaction, and then whatever his last name is. Tom, what's your overreaction?
Well, guys, I've been saying all year this defense is one of the best in the country. It's just like what Diesel just said. The offensive coordinator is a total joke. And, you put just about anybody else out there calling plays, we'd probably score 69 or 70 points on Saturday. But, I'm not going to get into all that. The Gamecocks won. I said all year this team can win 9 games. They're back on track. But my biggest overreaction of the weekend, it's more so across the board in college football. But my goodness, officiating in college football is awful. And I don't know how you fix it, but my goodness, this is some of the worst officiating we have seen across the board in a long time, guys. And it is bad. It is really, really bad.
Tom, it's time to have a professional officiating crew in college football. I understand they use the same crews again and again and again, but this is not all that they do. We need to there's so much money involved in college football now that refereeing college football is
full-time job.
It needs to be a full-time job, right? It has to be a full-time job, and they have to have their assignments either increased or decreased, promoted or demoted based on how good they are.
Yeah, Diesel, I watched a lot of football on Saturday, simply because, like you said, the NFL is unwatchable. So me and my wife, we have a plan. I watch football all day Saturday. On Sunday, we do what she wants to do.
Love it.
And on 4 different occasions and 4 different football games on Saturday, an official changed a call that was not reviewable after a delay or a timeout. That simply should never happen, especially 4 times in a day in college football.
Tom,
appreciate you, Tom.
Appreciate your overreaction. Let's see. John Dog says, okay, that's about the upset pick challenge. Go Dogs is like the new how about them Cowboys, says a texter from the 803. Never seen so many people jump on a bandwagon like Georgia. Well, it happens. and speaking of bandwagon, you know who you'll start to see less of now? The same people who jumped on a bandwagon, I don't know, in South Carolina 10, 15 years ago and started pulling for Alabama, that didn't have a Clemson tie or a South Carolina tie. You're going to start to see a lot of those Alabama bandwagoners fall off because that's what they were. They were bandwagoners.
I didn't see any South Carolina car flags on my way into work today. Normally you see them after a big win for like the first 2 or 3 days after a big win.
Yeah.
You see those car flags left on the cars for a couple of days. Where you at, Gamecock fans?
You don't see car flags anymore like you used to, You used to see car flags all the time. Like when I was younger, man, I just remember like it was all the time you saw car. I can't tell you the last time.
I see more NFL car flags than I do college car flags.
I can't tell you the last time I've seen a car flag.
Really?
No,
I see them. I see them all the time.
Really?
Maybe you live in a bougier neighborhood.
No, I don't live in a bougie, I promise. Let's see. Texter says, this is Keith in TR. Not so overreaction. Dow Loggins has got to go. Look, Keith, I've been saying that all year. I've been saying all year he sucks. Bo says overreaction. Anyone that throws trash on the field should be banned from the stadium.
Damn right, Bo.
Well, they've been getting texts. Have you seen that? The screenshots? The texts that are coming out? They have identified. I'll give you a perfect example. I'm going to do this on the spot. Texas has used AI and their camera systems to identify those who are throwing on the field. So here's the text messages that students are getting. We have identified that you were throwing items onto the Texas Longhorns field from the student section. As a result, your big ticket has been revoked for the 2024-2025 academic calendar. If you have any questions, please contact Texas Athletics. Thank you. That text is going out to students at Texas. They have used – I don't know how they did it, but they figured out who was throwing stuff.
Yeah, it took the FBI years to figure out who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. It took Texas less than 3 days.
It's unbelievable.
To find a full list of students. Look, that's it by itself, that's a little scary, right? Yeah. That we're having AI analyze video and they're tracking these kids down, figuring out who they are, and then banning them from the stadium. It's the right call, right? But it's scary how fast the technology is and how potentially accurate it is. We're gonna also see, Cole, like how many of those students who got that text message and who have been banned from the stadium weren't actually there. How many of them were misidentified? Right? Maybe that'd be a good reason to start painting your face up. You can paint your face up. You can throw whatever you want because that'll trip up the AI.
Dakota and Duncan says, why the hell are we still not giving Clemson credit where it's due? We will see them in the 12-team playoff. Dakota, I agree they'll be in the playoff. I'll give them credit. And by the way, I don't know if you know this or not. I'm a Clemson fan, have been my entire life. I'll give them credit for beating up on bad teams. I will not give them credit for being a top team in the country when I have not seen them be competent against a top team in the country. When I see that, I'll give them credit, but I'm not going to predict something or believe something that I have not seen. Did we miss Madcraft's overreaction? He said we were scared.
I've got it. I've got it here. Madcraft says, y'all must be scared to read my overreaction, afraid to stir the pot. Madcraft says his overreaction is to these texters on the text line. So Madcraft is calling all of you out. Bo, Keith and TR, John Dog, and the unnamed masses who still don't put their names on their text messages. He says, my overreaction is these texters on the text line with the audacity to talk down to number 6 Miami. Newsflash, Clemson's defense is ranked 53rd. Miami's is 21st.
We're going to find out, right? We're going to find out in Charlotte. I mean, we'll find out, I think, in Charlotte. We'll see, who is the better team.
I saw a graphic pop up earlier on Twitter, Cole, and it's like once you need it, you can't find it. It said Cam Ward is the first Miami quarterback to throw for 300 yards in 6 straight performances in Miami football history.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Or something like that. I mean, he's a whale of a quarterback. Nobody's denying that. Cam Ward is absolutely
And by
insane.
the way, if that game does happen, give me the over. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Give me the over. I don't care if it's 100. Give me the
Well, because Clemson's defense won't be able to stop him.
And I don't think Miami's defense will stop Clemson. I really don't. And I guess it could be one of those games who has less turnovers, who has the ball last. I think it could happen. I really do.
Yeah. The question is, what's 500 plus 500 in terms of yardage? It equals ratings in an ACC title game. Come on, you're telling me that would be...
The fact of the matter is, when's the last time? And I know North Carolina a few years ago had some really good offenses. I was there for 2 of them, or one of them rather, when they were in Charlotte for the ACC championship game. But I'm just telling you, you're right. From an offensive firework rating standpoint, Clemson Miami will generate some ratings because there will be offense on that field. It might be hard to watch defensively, Diesel, but
I mean, we expected Clemson to be taking on a Florida-based team in the ACC title game. We didn't expect it to be Miami.
Yeah.
I think we all looked at it and thought, man, Florida State's going to be killers. By the way, did Florida State even play this weekend?
I don't think so.
They did, but they lost. So they're 1-6.
Who'd they lose to?
Duke. 23-16 final score on the road at Duke.
That's rough.
Brutal.
That's right. My last overreaction before we hear from Jack Veltri, I said that South Carolina's defense is top 3 in the country. I will also keep it South Carolina for my next overreaction, Diesel. I say next overreaction, South Carolina's offense has hit their ceiling. I think this is all you're going to get. Could they continue to get better and more efficient and not turn the ball over? Sure. But from a offensive production an output standpoint, Diesel, I think this might be, again, this is an overreaction. This might be their ceiling. This might be who they are, and there might not be these big offensive outbreaks coming against good teams.
Well, to your point, Cole, I don't know where South Carolina stands in terms of generating turnovers and where they are there, but they have now moved to 16th in the country as far as total defense, now averaging fewer than 300 yards given up per game.
Pretty good.
Of course, you add to that multiple turnovers, 2 interceptions, one of them being a pick 6, scoop and score. Yeah, that's when you've got a very, very, very opportunistic defense. And we're excited to talk about it with Jack Veltri next.
Talking South Carolina Gamecocks, we opened the show with the Gamecocks discussion and the absolute domination defensively of the Gamecocks in Oklahoma this weekend. We bring in Jack Veltri, Gamecock Central, who joins us, good friend of the show, joins us very frequently to talk South Carolina Gamecocks. Jack, obviously a huge weekend for the Gamecocks. Do you feel like South Carolina Gamecock fans right now are 100% content, fired up, happy to be where they are? Or do you feel like Gamecock fans, based on what you've seen and heard, are still a little cautious because of the lack of offensive output on Saturday?
Well, Cole, they're definitely still cautiously optimistic, I think is the best way to put it. Like, there were times where in that game, handling a message board and stuff and providing updates, there's still people thinking like, oh, I don't know if South Carolina's got this game in the bag. Yeah, I wouldn't hold out hope just yet. And I saw people comment like, oh, Oklahoma's going to come right back in it. So obviously, like, look, they're happy with the win. Like, who wouldn't be? But there's always room for improvement, especially with this offense. People are definitely still looking for this offense to take that next step.
Jack Veltri, Gamecock Central, joining us here on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Jack, the defense has to have what percentage of that performance against A&M to beat them?
I don't know, because the Oklahoma and A&M are completely different teams, obviously, right? Oklahoma really has no offense. A&M is going to be a lot better on offense compared to what South Carolina just saw. But at the same time, I think this Carolina defense can go up against anyone. So to kind of answer the question, I don't know if I can give a certain percentage. I mean, obviously 100% would be great. But I think somewhere, just if it's not going to be 100% what you saw against Oklahoma, I would say about the 70-80%, because hey, you're not going to get 9 sacks every game. So if you still get your number of sacks, like 3, 4, 5, you'll be feeling pretty good about where you're at.
What would you say was the most impressive part, Jack, of what you saw on Saturday?
I think just how quickly they answered the call, right? Like, they immediately from the start of that game, they dominated. Like, first play, Nicky Minwar gets the interception. Then, right after that, on the next drive for Oklahoma, they force a fumble, and Tonka Hemingway takes it the other way for a touchdown. And then right after that, Nicky Minwar gets another interception, and it's a pick six. So I think just how quickly this team jumped out to the big lead they got was probably the most surprising thing, because you look up, it's like, dang, it's 21-0, and it's only like 5 minutes in the game. Like, where did this come from?
Jack, we saw Oklahoma go for just a head scratcher of a fake punt on their own 20-yard line, which didn't make any sense to me. Did you get the sense? And I know this is kind of a backhanded question, but did you get the sense that Oklahoma sort of snatched away the dunce cap? Why did they do that kind of play in that game?
Well, I think, and hearing Shane Beamer kind of talk about it a little bit, what he basically said was that they kind of expected something like that to come. Like, look, you're down 21-0. It's the second quarter. Nothing's going right for you on offense. You're not completely backed up to where you can't go for it at all. Run a fake punt. Like, I think that's kind of what they kind of expected. They had practiced it throughout the week. They knew Oklahoma was probably going to do something like that just based off of Brett Venables' track record and stuff. I think they kind of were ready for it. I mean, you see it on the play. It's like Demetrius Knight is the guy who made the tackle on the play. Look at the play. He's right on the outside. He's running up to where Bauer Sharp is, the tight end who caught the pass on the fake punt, and he was ready for it. So I just think it speaks to they were prepared for that type of moment and any trickery. They didn't want to give away any extra possessions.
Hey, Jack, tell me why I am wrong on this. In the very last segment we did, what was our overreaction Monday, I said my overreaction, one of them was what we're seeing is South Carolina's offense. This is their ceiling offensively. This is their ceiling. They're not going to be this high output offense that every Gamecock fan's hoping for. Tell me I'm wrong there.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against the call. I mean, look, this offense is, I don't know what to make of it, and I'm not being a hater or anything. So I just see it for what it is. I don't think this offense is very good. I think I'll clarify on that. It's not that they're not good. It's just that they I don't know what their potential really is. Like, are they going to have like a random 60-point game like South Carolina had 2 years ago against Tennessee after having a 6-point game of no offense against Florida? Is it going to be something like that? I don't know. But I feel like from what I'm seeing, like, look, I'm seeing Lenore Sellers grow. I think he's played a lot better. The offensive line is just a mess. They're going to end up breaking whatever sack record they had last year, giving up 41 sacks in a season because they're about 9 away right now. And then just the receivers, like, they're fine, but they're not, Xavier Legette, Juice Wells, nothing like that. So I think the offense, there's probably still room left to grow and fully get to where they want to go. Because, I mean, obviously they missed Jared Brown last week and stuff, so he hasn't been out there. What does that look like when he comes back? So I think once we get everyone back out there on the field and, they're playing against A&M under the lights and stuff, I think we'll really get to see, like, okay, what is this offense, like, really made of? Because it's been tough to judge over these last few weeks with just the ups and downs of everything.
At Gamecock Central on Twitter, GamecockCentral.com is where you can find his work. Jack Veltri joining us here on the show. Early in Dabo's career and tenure at Clemson, it was his MO to play the disrespect card a lot. Do you think Shane Beamer should be playing up a little bit of the disrespect card, given the fact that the AP poll only has them receiving 1 vote? I feel like South Carolina is better than 1 vote in the AP poll.
Oh, totally. Look, anytime, this goes for any coach. Like, if you're ever in that situation, like, where you just aren't getting the respect you feel like you deserve, you should definitely use it to your advantage. I don't blame Shane if he wants to do that. Like, it's totally justified. Because, look, they are better than what the record indicates. Like, they are not a 4-3 team. The record might say that, but they should be 6-1 right now. Like, it's clear as day. Go back to the LSU game. You commit less penalties in that game, and you hold on to you build off your 17-0 lead. You win that football game. Against Alabama, if you don't turn the ball over as much as you did, you probably win that football game. So there is an argument to be made that they should be better than where they're at right now, but they are at where they're at right now, and that's 4-3. So yeah, I definitely feel like they should be getting a little bit more respect, but at the same time, it's like the record indicates one thing, and they still got work to do. I think that is the best thing about this, is that they still have room to grow. The offense is hopefully only going to get better from here. We'll see. But you have to feel really good about where this team is at right now with 1 month left to go in the regular season for them.
Jack, we did see South Carolina improve on the penalties and turnovers this past week. Was there anything that you've heard from Shane Beamer directly last week or this week or after the game that was something that they worked on specifically, where they were able to get better on the penalties and turnovers? Or was it just a matter of, look, they've been so turnover prone, eventually they were going to have a game where they didn't turn the ball over as much?
Yeah, obviously they're always working on that stuff. Like, I mean, that's something that they've talked about throughout the week. Like, you definitely, they know what went wrong in that game. They know the penalties, the turnovers, it's an issue. And obviously they worked to correct it. Now, what they did specifically, I'm not sure exactly, but obviously they're working on it. Like, I know with the penalties and stuff, they had been, trying to make sure that the defense isn't jumping off sides by clapping as much as they can, the coaches and stuff. So I know that, but with turnovers and stuff, I think it obviously just comes down to Dell Loggins had a good point earlier last week. It was just, Lenore's just doing what the coaches are telling him to do. And that's, get the ball away and stuff and try to make a play, this and that. So I think this week it was just more about, hey, when the play's over, just get rid of the ball. Like, you don't need to be a hero here. And I think that's kind of what we saw out of Sellers specifically with the turnovers and why South Carolina didn't have any, get the ball back to Oklahoma at all.
Jack, getting off the Gamecock beat here for just a moment, what were your thoughts on the Alabama coach literally pushing a player back out onto the field to quote unquote fake an injury and slow the game down? I know South Carolina obviously saw a lot of that with Ole Miss. In your mind, is there anything that even can be done about it? If they could somehow legislate it, what should be done about it?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, man. Did this happen like against Tennessee or something?
Yeah, it was against Tennessee. There was an Alabama player running off the field. He was, if my memory serves me correctly, he was essentially 1 foot into the white line, so he was off the field. And then an Alabama coach turns him around, pushes him 2 yards back out onto the field, and he goes down with an injury.
I didn't really get to see that. So when I got back, it was like fourth quarter of the Tennessee game out. But anyway, look, just in general, it's an issue. We saw with the Ole Miss thing how ridiculous that was. Just in general in college football, it's Bush League, I think, in my opinion, to be doing stuff like that. And there's no real way to kind of stop it, unfortunately, because it's like, okay, like, yeah, maybe you can like take like the officiating and the rules, like maybe you just have the guy come out, like if you fake if you're injured or whatever, you can't go right back out in the field next play. You have to sit out the rest of the series. I don't know how you kind of like micromanage that essentially, but look, man, it's an issue. It's just bad sportsmanship, in my opinion. Look, you're always trying to get an advantage, but that's not the way to do it. It's slowing the game down. It's wrong, in my opinion. I think there's like, you need, like, if you're a coach doing that, shame on you, because you need to be doing better than that.
We're talking to Jack Veltri, Gamecock Central. Jack, we've talked about the goods, we've talked about the bads, the pros and the cons, and what we've seen from South Carolina in these first few games this season after the Oklahoma game. Obviously a bye, but when you look at their next 5, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 of those 5 that are ranked. How should South Carolina fans right now, in your mind, be feeling? You mentioned earlier that optimism. When you look at the next 5 games, where do you think Gamecock fans should be in terms of what they can do the rest of the season?
Yeah, you should be excited, honestly. Like, seriously, I think South Carolina has a chance to win any of those games. I'll tell you exactly why. Their defense. Their defense is outstanding. And I think they can really, like Shane Beamer said after his press conference, like, they can go toe-to-toe with anyone. I fully believe that. Like, after seeing them go toe-to-toe with LSU, Alabama on the road, mind you, and nearly win that game, and then go out here and blow out Oklahoma, they can do it, man. They can easily finish this season 9-3. Now, at the same time, they could also be a team that just stumbles their way to the finish line and ends up 6-6 or something like that. So that's the thing with this team. They got to find their stride. They got to find consistency. We're going to see what kind of team shows up in 2 weeks here. Look, the last time they had a bye week, we know what happened against Ole Miss. They only scored 3 points and looked abysmal. So this time around, I think you would hope the team looks a lot more ready and prepared. And if they pull off a big win against A&M, I mean, look, Vanderbilt, I think they should win that game, even though Vanderbilt's playing better. Missouri's kind of sliding a little bit. You should probably win that game, in my opinion. And then Wofford, you obviously need to win that. And then Clemson, who knows, man? So I think there's a lot to be excited about for South Carolina right now with the rest of the schedule.
Jack, if you're an opposing offensive line coach or offensive coordinator, who scares you the most right now? Dylan Stewart or Kyle Kennard? There was a moment there, I want to say it was on the first or even second drive Oklahoma had from scrimmage, where both of those guys got to the quarterback. One kind of twisted his shoulders and turned him a little bit, and the other one pushed him out of the pocket. I mean, that's just such a scary 2 guys to book in that defensive line.
Shoot, I mean, that's a tough question to even pick one of them because they're both so good. If I had to say one, though, and look, I think both are amazing, so don't get it twisted here. Something about Dylan Stewart just, I think, scares the living you-know-what out of defenses. Like, just seeing him in that Oklahoma game, the first play of the game, he nearly sacked Michael Hawkins Jr., and Hawkins obviously threw an interception on the play. Like, if Dylan had been a little bit more to the left, a little closer, he's probably wrapping him up or forcing a fumble right there. Then on the next interception, he actually ends up hitting Hawkins, and it forces a bad throw into no man's land back to Imanwari. And you just see Dylan blowing by this offensive tackle, and it's like, man, he is so good. And same deal with Kennard. But teams obviously put a lot of pressure and a little bit more focus probably on Stewart just because of how quick and athletic he is. But at the same time, it's like, hey, this has been the case all year. If you're going to do that, it means you're going to be having less focus on Kennard, which gives him kind of the upper hand there.
Jack, great stuff as always, man. Sure to appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jack.
Jack Veltri, Gamecock Central. Let's get to a few texts real quick, Diesel, before we roll. 502 says, USC fan here, saying you're not a 4-3 team when you're 4-3 is ridiculous. The reason they're not getting respect is the lack of disciple result. I think he means discipline there, resulting ways to win those close games. We should play the lack of respect card when we look a lot better and actually are being disrespected.
Well, I mean, look, when you're talking about teams that are in that 22 to 25 range and the first few that are receiving votes, you're talking about incomplete football teams. I mean, it's not like you have 100 complete football teams out there and you're trying to parse words and figure out which one is just slightly better here, slightly better there. South Carolina has a nationally elite defense. And what we were just talking about that last question, you got two absolute maulers on defensive end for South Carolina. And it's like, how do you game plan against a team like that when they're on defense and you're on offense? That's a scary, scary place to be. And just by virtue of having that good of a defense alone, I think South Carolina deserves a little bit more consideration. Consider the fact, Cole, that right there with them and others receiving votes are Nebraska and Liberty.
Yeah.
Liberty playing the worst strength of schedule in college football for the second year straight. And effectively, I know this is not an exact science, but effectively, the AP voters think South Carolina is on par with Liberty. And so that is absolutely a disrespect-worthy card. They need to be throwing a lot more votes at South Carolina.
When you talk about Texter, the last thing I'll say before we run, I hear you, but at the end of the day, I do believe you're a really good defense with an average offense, which makes you a good football team, right? You talk about the defense that's really, really good, borderline elite, and your offense that's subpar. You combine those, you're a good football team. Good football teams are in the top 25. I don't have a problem using the disrespect card because you do. If what Jack Veltri said is true, saying you do have a chance to be in every single one of the remaining games because of the defense, if that's true, you're a pretty darn good football team. And let's just remember, there's only been one game this year that you weren't really in because the offense did not show up, and that was Ole Miss. Other than that, you've been in every game against LSU, against Alabama. So what makes you believe you won't be in the game against A&M, Missouri, and possibly Clemson? I'm just saying their defense is good enough to keep you in those games. It's a legit football team.
Yeah, Cole, in the last segment here, last break, you and I were looking at some potentially gigantic breaking news in college football. We're not entirely sure what to make of this at this point. I think our assumption right now is that it is false news. It is fake news. There was a report tweeted out by 24/7 Sports, their official 24/7 Sports account, that said Quinn Ewers was shutting his season down to focus on the NFL draft. Now, that post is starting to go viral. People are screenshotting it and sending it out everywhere like crazy, right? But that post has since been taken down from the 24/7 official website.
Yeah.
This is all stemming from a story that Quinn Ewers didn't show up to his usual Monday press conference availability. I guess Quinn is there every single Monday. Now, Quinn did not play well, obviously, against Georgia this weekend. And if he's a little butthurt, embarrassed, or even potentially just injured and receiving treatment from that performance, it's understandable that he's not available to go into the press conference room. But Cole, that's just wild to see that posted out.
Yeah, I don't think it's true.
I don't think it's true either. But obviously, as soon as something like that gets posted, people screenshot it immediately under the assumption that there's a chance that it's not going to go, that it's going to get taken down, and they want to have some sort of a record of it. So remember, just be a little more discerning when it comes to what you're seeing out on social media. Cole, when we come back, nothing brings me joy more than watching Aaron Rodgers fail, and he failed hard on Sunday. That's coming up next. We'll talk about that and why we think Aaron Rodgers is failing next. Cole, I'm not generally a hater. Believe it or not, I'm not a hater. I don't hate South Carolina. I don't hate Shane Beamer. I don't hate Georgia Southern. Well, okay, I do hate Georgia Southern.
What about Clemson?
No, I don't hate Clemson
Okay,
at
good.
all. I do enjoy actively hating Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
And I do enjoy actively hating Aaron Rodgers. But I think those are the only two people in sports that I hate. Like, I don't hate opposing baseball players. I don't hate opposing hockey players. I don't hate opposing basketball players.
And your hate for them don't have really anything to do with their game.
Well, it's all
Does
their
it?
personality.
Right.
Yeah, most of it's their personality.
Yeah.
And when that horrible personality spills over into bad football,
You love it.
that's when I love it. Yeah, I get to revel in it. And I really do. Mad Kraft asked the question, asks why I'm a hater of Aaron Rodgers. He says, because he isn't vaccinated? No. Or is he not calculating the curvature of the earth on his passes since he probably thinks it's flat? Well, Mad Kraft, I appreciate you brought up two things that I actually do hate about Aaron Rodgers. It's not that he isn't vaccinated. It's that he lied about being vaccinated. That's what really bugs me most about Aaron Rodgers. And then thinking he can do whatever he wants to do outside of that. No, I didn't lie.
We have found the root.
I just didn't tell
problem.
the truth. No, it's that Aaron Rodgers gets his way every single time because he's got a name, right? Because he won a Super Bowl years ago, and he's bitched and moaned and cried and complained his way into everything he's ever wanted in this league. And now that he finally gets it, he still sucks. He still sucks. It's the, well, maybe if guys aren't doing what they're supposed to do, we'll give somebody else a chance and sit those guys. Aaron Rodgers not sitting himself when he throws multiple picks in the end zone in that game immediately following that. But Aaron Rodgers just got outplayed, Cole, by a guy who literally hasn't played yet this season.
Yeah, he did. Look, I'm not
Yeah.
the biggest Russell Wilson fan.
Yeah.
I like his game. I've always thought he was a competitor. Look, Aaron Rodgers, for me, I don't like him either. For me, it has to do with the actual narrative of him being one of the best quarterbacks ever. You know, I try not to get caught up in the vaccine stuff. Like, I just kind of let that stuff go. But like the mantra, the narrative of him being better than Tom Brady at one point, being the GOAT and being the absolute best thing we've ever seen from Stephen A. Smith and all these other people, that's kind of why I've disliked them. But he right now, he's not playing good football.
No, he threw 2 interceptions. He got sacked once. I mean, that's not bad. You're getting sacked once in the NFL. That means your offensive line is doing their job, Cole. But he got the player that he finally wanted, Devontae Adams. First game with the Jets. I get it. It's going to take some time for him to learn the offense and get sort of folded into what it is they do. He got his 3 receptions for 30 yards in that game, Cole. But, I mean, I want to see – I'm expecting to see this – number of targets towards Devontae Adams to shift towards his massive favoritism for Devontae Adams. By the end of this season, it's going to be the Aaron and Devontae show. And then if it's still not successful, he's going to bitch and moan about it and say, well, we need to get a new offensive lineman. We need to get a new tight end. We need to get a new running back. When the running back was the only good thing about this game for the Jets. Breece Hall was great. 38 yards on the ground, not great there. But in the passing game and the receiving game, Breece Hall was awesome. Had 100 yards receiving in that game.
He did. And the reality of it is, for me, like, Aaron Rodgers is on the back end of his career. That's one thing. But this Jets offense, even with other quarterbacks the past few years, they've had issues. They've had holes that weren't related to the quarterback position. So the people who thought that plugging Aaron Rodgers into this offense was going to be the magic answer, I think those people are to blame. Well, you've got to have, again, we talked about it with the Panthers earlier. You've got to have more than a quarterback. And Aaron Rodgers right now, he doesn't have – I know you said it, you don't like it. He doesn't have much help around him, and he's not playing good. When you combine all that, you have a bad offense.
Do we think Aaron Rodgers retires after the season? Calls it quits.
I think he goes one more.
If he gets everything he wants and he's still not successful, does he hang it up?
I don't think so, but it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't shock me. All right, getting into the biggest games this past weekend in the world of college football. Alabama was a big one. Texas, Georgia, a big one. Other games that we haven't gotten to yet. You can text into the show. If you want to talk about a particular game, 71307, start your text with the word fans. Well, Texas is by far the absolute best team in the country, right? There's no way there's any team in the SEC that can hang with them. That's exactly what I thought. That's exactly what I said. That's why you don't always trust every single word that I say. Diesel, we saw Georgia over Texas this past weekend, 30-15. We've talked South Carolina. We've talked Clemson football. But the reality of it is, when you look across the college football landscape, there were some entertaining games that we have yet to get to. Arkansas could not do the unthinkable against LSU. We all know what Clemson did to Virginia. We all know what the Gamecocks did. We've talked about it. Georgia Tech couldn't be the upset we once hoped they could be in the Upset Picks Challenge against Notre Dame. But let's start with Alabama, whose dynasty looks to be 110% over. Diesel. We actually asked Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered that question about a week or two ago, and Chris said, Cole, their dynasty is over. They haven't won a championship in 4 years. Alabama falls to Tennessee on Saturday, 24-17. Alabama's second loss in conference this season, 5-2 overall now on the outside looking in. When you look at the top 12, what's expected to be the top 12, the Alabama dynasty is now a thought of the past. Diesel, how does that sit with you?
It sits fine. You know, you always have to have the ebb and flow of college football, right? There was a time before Alabama was a dynasty, and there's a time after Alabama was a dynasty.
But I just don't remember the before.
Well, you're not that young, Cole. That's the thing. Is you're just not thinking back far enough. You know, there was a time, Cole, when Alabama was nothing, and Texas and Southern Cal and Miami were competing for national championships year in and year out. You know, I mean, like that time was not that long ago. You just got to be able to look back a little bit farther, you know, get out the binoculars.
I just don't know if I like it.
Well, that's fine. But, you know, Alabama's never going to be a non-factor, right? I mean, unless the unthinkable happens. And Kalen DeBoer really did forget how to coach football between leaving Washington and taking the job at Alabama. I genuinely don't believe that he's forgotten what he's doing. I think Kalen DeBoer, this is certainly an ugly time, a dark time in Alabama football. Let's be real. They're 5-2, right? It's not like they're awful and they're bereft of talent. I think it's just going to take some time. Anytime there's a new coach coming in, you know, the likelihood that Kalen DeBoer was going to be able to keep up exactly what Nick Saban started is very, very low.
It is.
And we have to realize that Alabama might be a 10-2 football team or a 9-3 football team for a year or two until Kalen DeBoer gets exactly what he wants onto that roster and is able to right the ship his way. Remember, he's playing with a roster full of Nick Saban's guys, and I understand it's one of the most talented rosters in college football. Any coach would love to just trade their roster for that one outside of maybe like 4, right? Any coach would want to have that roster. It just takes time to clear out the nomenclature and this is how we do things under Nick Saban from these Alabama players and get it to the way Kalen DeBoer does things.
I'll tell you this. I think I might have been wrong in talking about overreactions, talking about knee-jerk. Diesel. I might have been wrong in the sense of I thought the Alabama dynasty would pick up where it left off. And I believe that when I made those assumptions and I made those statements, when I look back now, I believe it was just absolutely disrespectful for me to make those type of statements. Not because Kalen DeBoer is not a good coach, but because the Alabama dynasty does not happen. It does not exist without 2 words. And those 2 words are Nick Saban, right? I felt as if Kalen DeBoer could quickly pick up where Nick Saban left off. And I know it's been 4 years since Alabama's won a championship. However, I think I was wrong in the aspect of only once in a generation type coaches can turn programs into dynasties, Diesel. Nick Saban did just that. And you know what? That dynasty that Nick Saban had may never be replicated at Alabama or anywhere else. And for that reason, I think I was wrong assuming that Kalen DeBoer could pick up right where Nick Saban left off. To your point, Alabama's still a very good football team. They're going to be competitive, but are they okay being just that? Are they okay being just a competitive football team and not a dynasty?
So I was listening to a podcast from our friend Josh Pate last week, and he said, and this is going to sound ludicrous when you hear the words, but allow me to explain what he meant here. He said Nick Saban has ruined college football. And you're saying, what? What do you mean? He was an elite head coach. He had a dynasty run that was absolutely incredible, probably not to be matched again. He goes, Nick Saban taught us that that's the way college football should be.
Yeah.
Nick Saban taught us that the norm should be putting together 3 out of 5, 6 out of 10 kind of national championship runs is the measuring stick by which all coaches should be measured. Nick Saban did it. He won, I believe, 6 at Alabama. Or was it 5 at Alabama?
It was a lot.
After him, Dabo won 2. Kirby Smart's won 2. So it's teaching us that the elite level head coaches just go on these ridiculous runs and win 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
Which is not the way college football should be. Prior to Nick Saban doing what he did, any head coach winning 1 put them in elite status. Winning 2 put them in the tippy top of the elite status, right? So what Nick Saban was able to achieve at Alabama should be unachievable. And I think it's going to take some fans some time to recalibrate in their minds what elite head coaches in this sport actually achieve and teach them to not treat any coach who's not doing what Nick Saban did like failures.
Well, what it should teach me is, and what it has taught me is that there are, Diesel, to your point, I believe that there are elite coaches in the game now. But what it's taught me is Nick Saban wasn't elite. Whatever we think of now as elite, whatever level there is above elite, whatever level that is, that's where you put Nick Saban. Because, to your point, it's super unfair to claim that every coach, Dan Lanning, Ryan Day, and Kirby Smart should all win 5, 6, 7 championships like Nick Saban did. But I just don't think Nick Saban was elite. I think he was better than elite. And I know somebody will clip that part out, right, and put that on a promo.
God tier is what they call that.
It is. He truly was. And I do believe that's why it's so impressive.
So it would take smarter diagnostic minds than ours to break down what's going on with the quarterback position with Jalen Milroe at Alabama. Jalen is a very good quarterback. I don't think any of us ever looked at Jalen Milroe as if he was some world beater of a quarterback. He's very, very good. But, was he the absolute best of the best in the SEC? No. But what we saw, Cole, you just look at some of the numbers from Saturday night's game, Alabama at Tennessee. Number one, they're on the road playing in a hostile environment, 110,000 fans inside Neyland Stadium. Cole, they asked Jalen Milroe to throw the ball 45 times.
That's a lot.
45 times. Compare that to what they asked Nico at Tennessee to do, whose last name I still can't pronounce.
NIL.
Yeah.
That's how you pronounce it.
Iamaliava, I think, is where I stand now.
Pretty good.
I could be wrong there. But they only asked him to throw the ball 28 times. So you're asking Jalen Milroe to do a lot more as a quarterback, and you're saying to yourself, well, he's an upperclassman. He should be able to do more. Well, you put him in that position where he has to throw the ball more often. He's not getting a whole lot of help from his running back, Jam Miller. And so it's putting him in a position where he has to press, where he has to throw the ball into heavy coverage. Now, you could ask yourself, is that a receiving problem? Is that they're not getting separation? Is that a coaching problem with what the wide receiver is doing?
Yeah.
Or does Jalen Milroe feel like he needs to put this team on his shoulders, which tells me maybe there's a little bit of disconnect between him and his head coach.
There could be. There could be. I don't think Alabama's offense is comfortable. When you watch them, they just don't look comfortable. They don't look like they're 100% comfortable in their identity. Their defense, I didn't think the defense was the problem on Saturday. It felt as if they led the majority of that game, right? Watching that game, I was like, oh, Bama's got control. Bama's got control. I almost to the point was thinking, man, Bama's not going to lose this game because their defense is playing so good. However, eventually their offense, Diesel, was asked to do a little more than what it could handle, and obviously 17 points was their ceiling against Tennessee. Credit Tennessee, a 6-1 Tennessee team with only one loss. We all know that one loss wasn't a good loss.
Yeah, we're holding that Arkansas loss against them, I think, a little bit too much. They put up a consistent number, not crazy numbers, 25 points against Oklahoma, 23 points. And Oklahoma, by the way, has a top 35 defense.
Yeah.
23 points against Florida, 24 points against Alabama. Tennessee's offense is not incredible, but they're good enough when you've got a defense that's holding your opponents to, 14, 15, 17 points a game.
Texter says the word that you're looking for, talking about Nick Saban, is legendary. Going back to what I said with, I don't think Nick Saban was elite. I think he was above that. Texter says you're looking for the word legendary. It was legendary. There's no doubt. I mean, there's no doubt about it, man. It might be the best ever, and there might not be another one that ever comes close. That's how good he was. Any surprise, Diesel, in the shootout that happened in Louisville, 52-45, Miami escapes 7-0. We talked about them earlier. Their offense is as good as it gets in the country, but Louisville at times, and man, talking about some bad calls that Tom talked about earlier. Woo! If you watch that game, and Madcraft, I'm sorry, but you got to admit it, Louisville was robbed on a few of those plays. I'm very impressed with their offense, Diesel, but again, there's nothing that's shown me thus far that Miami can stop anybody.
Yeah, this is one for transparency. I didn't get a chance to watch this game, so Miami is just next level, consistent on offense. Cam Ward is insane, right?
Insane.
And this defense, the defense is not playing well right now. It's not. They're giving up a ton of points. The defense is leaving them in positions where Cam Ward has to go out and win the game for them. Now, to his credit, he is doing that. He's coming from behind. Cam Ward is, in a way, he's like 3 tiers above level what I would see out of a guy like Grayson McCall a few years ago. When you needed him to go get something, he goes and gets it. Like, no question about it. He is not going to lose you a game. Cam Ward has that it factor that goes out and wins and makes the plays that it needs to make. So, in Miami, heck of a job there against Louisville, but for God's sakes, you got to get something going on the defensive side of the ball. You got to shut somebody down. It's a lot more fun for you, Miami fans, to not be in a position where you have to win every game in a shootout.
It's true. And with the expanded playoff, the reality is they could afford to lose. I don't know. They might not could afford to lose one. But when you look at the rest of the games, we talked about Texas, Georgia. LSU looked really good. Again, I'm just continuing, Diesel, to become more and more high on Garrett Nussmeier and this LSU offense. They're just continuing to look like a well-oiled machine. And then I want to go to, I can't remember who made this point earlier in the show. It was about A&M. I think it was a caller. But A&M starting to just get better. And look, I know they beat a terrible Mississippi State team. But all of a sudden, this A&M team that the Gamecocks are preparing for right now, Diesel, they're 6-1. They're 4-0 in the SEC. I don't know what they are in the newest top 10, not top 10, top 25 rankings.
14, I believe.
14? It's pretty good. Pretty good knock on the door of top 10. This A&M team, I believe we have to give credit where credit's due here, because going into the season, this wasn't looked at as a top 15 team.
No, and they're just consistently putting out good offensive performances, good defensive performances. It wins It wins games. It's like it doesn't get a ton of national attention. College Game Day is probably not going to College Station. It's one of those teams that kind of slips under the radar. And I guarantee you, Mike Elko is loving every minute of not being in the national spotlight. He secretly, internally, is probably playing the disrespect card to his team. They're not paying attention to you. They're not giving you the credit that you're deserved. But in the back of his mind, he's saying good. He's saying good.
Oh,
keep him hungry. Keep him chasing that thing. And hey, if they get it done against LSU this weekend, it might be the best game of the weekend this coming weekend. A&M hosting LSU. They'll start getting that credit. And then the question is, can they perform when the spotlight is on them?
It's going to be fun to watch. I can't wait. This is going to be good. All right, last one. I watched this game on Saturday thanks to YouTube TV Split. Diesel, I'm not impressed with Missouri, man. I know they're 6-1. I know they're 2-1 in the conference. This Missouri team, though, they barely beat Auburn at the very end of the game. It took a game-winning drive. I just don't going into the season, you and I said it. Their schedule sets up. They don't play the big dogs. They can run the table. They've lost one. I just don't see this team. And again, I could be way off. I don't see this team as a serious threat to South Carolina right now.
Really?
No.
Really? That's
defensively, I feel like the Gamecocks will shut them down.
I think they're going to maul. Yeah, I think you're right. I think they're going to maul Missouri's offensive line. That's going to be a fascinating one. Missouri, another one of those teams that does just enough in a lot of situations. Now, you take the Texas A&M game out of it where they got absolutely beat down and embarrassed. They're winning games against power opponents by a touchdown. They beat Boston College by 6. Yeah. They beat Vanderbilt by 3. They beat Auburn by 4. So again, they're a team that's doing just enough to get by. But hey, at the end of the day, we're not looking at total points for and total points against and how we rank these teams. We're looking at wins and losses. Yeah. The 6-1 is what matters. It's not and I'm doing crazy math off the top of my head. I could be very, very wrong about this. It's not the 400 points for Missouri to the 325 points for their opponents.
No, it's certainly not. The reality is they're not looking good in their wins. Now, Diesel, I had a thought on Friday. And I know you were all Friday. I can't remember if I said it on air or not, but I had a thought that maybe this was the weekend that Army and Navy both, one of the two, not both, I'm sorry, one of the two laid an egg. But I was super wrong there. Army looked really good. They got Mike Houston fired, and then Navy rolled Charlotte. I'm glad I didn't pick that as my upset pick of the week, 51-17. Are we to the point now where we're every week on the edge of our seat asking the question, well, surely Army and Navy has to lose this week, right? I mean, they're not going to continue this. I know one of them plays Notre Dame here pretty soon, but Army, Navy, I love the world of college football where they're both good.
Yeah, this is great. This is just great for college football to see both of these programs back inside the top 25, dominating week in and week out.
Notre Dame this weekend.
Oh, Navy has Notre Dame this weekend. That's gonna be a tough one. But hey, I mean, this has been a year of weird upsets. I mean, if you had to guess off the top of your head, Cole, what will the opening line be for Navy Notre Dame?
Well,
I don't know.
Saw it already.
Oh, no, opening lines are already out.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's Notre Dame minus 12.5. Notre Dame it's at Navy, but it's at Navy, but it's going to be played at MetLife Stadium. So
that'll be a good game.
How does Notre Dame? I get it because it's Notre Dame, right? Notre Dame comes to town. It's a big deal no matter who they play. But now they've had 2 road games that are not true road games. They're playing in East Rutherford, New Jersey, at the home of the Jets and the Giants. So
that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Though.
So they're not going on the road to Navy. That's going to allow a lot more Notre Dame fans in. That's going to reduce the home field advantage for Navy. I know Navy plays in this stadium every year when they do the Army-Navy game. Yeah. I don't like it because it takes some of that home field advantage away.
But I'm telling you, man, upset pick challenge right there.
I love watching teams come in, like especially when elite teams come in and play at Duke, because they're playing in basketball.
Yeah.
Because Cameron is such a small place.
It is, man. It's fun.
The confines are tiny. They're tight. It's loud. I want Notre Dame to have to face those kind of conditions.
Yeah.
And I think it takes away from some of the degree of difficulty for Notre Dame to give them essentially neutral field sites multiple times a season.
And Army's off this weekend.
So they can't lose.
They could be sitting pretty, like really pretty, if they were to be able to get that one in. We're going to hear our replay interview from David Hood, but let's go to Billy Horn, who I know he was on a heater. I don't know if he's still on a heater in the Upset Picks Challenge, but before we run, Billy, what's up, man?
Not much, boys. Nope. UCF lost by 3 on me versus Iowa State. I tried.
You tried.
But on your comment about the Navy Notre Dame game, I'm looking at that game. I'm serious. Thinking about that game for my upset pick of the week. I'm looking. If Navy controls the running game and Notre Dame only gets the ball 4 or 5 times during the game, and their quarterback likes to throw at least 1 interception a game, Navy steals a extra possession. I think Navy can pull this off. I just don't know if I can talk myself into it yet.
Well, if they can frustrate Notre Dame by playing consistent, good defense, I think you're right, Billy. I think they got a good chance here. By the way, Billy, you are currently sitting in tied for 11th place in the Upset Picks Challenge with 33.5 points. The leader, Twisted Whisker, has 55.5 points. So you find yourself sitting pretty there in 11th, but at the same time, you find yourself 20 points down from the leader, Twisted Whisker, just staying on a heater. I don't know what his secret is.
Basically, what he's saying, Billy, is you got a long way to go and a short time to get there, buddy.
Yes. You gentlemen have a good evening.
Thank you, Billy.
And by the way, I'm sure tomorrow at some point, 4 o'clock hour, 5 o'clock hour, we'll do an Upset Picks, kind of early lean. What are you feeling? What are you thinking, right? Seeing what game we like the most, Diesel. I didn't move up much. I'm at what? Let's see. I'm at 15 points. Is that right? Yeah, 15 points is what I have. Me and Wesley Roberts tied, I believe.
Yeah, I have. Where have I dropped to? I'm down to 14 points. You're ahead of me now.
1.
God, at least I got Chris Phillips by 1. I can sleep well at night knowing that I'm 1 point ahead of Chris Phillips because he keeps going for the little ones. I don't know why.
But I'll tell you, man, I do agree with Billy Horn there, Diesel. That game's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
I have a feeling that beginning on Wednesday, we might be loaded with Navy over Notre Dame picks. I could be wrong, though. We'll see.
I think we're going to get a bunch of those. When we come back, Cole, we're going to replay David Hood. Our interview with David Hood from earlier today. I had a Tolo get mad at a question that I asked of David Hood. Fair, foul, what do you think? You're going to hear that next on the Fan Upstate.
you look at the end, and Virginia still rushed for either 2.8 or 2.9 yards per rush. I think, 29 for like 64 yards or something like that. That's fantastic. You wanted to see if the offense just kept rolling, and they kind of did that thing again where they kind of sleepwalk a little bit through the first quarter, and they kept rolling. And I really wanted to see them get some pressure on defense, and they did that too. And there were signs of life out there. You got a little chippy at times, and they really checked all the boxes. It's like we did, Grace and Man and I, TigerNet, we do a podcast. And really, if there's one question that you have on this team right now, it's defensive depth.
Talking right now to David Hood of TigerNet.com. Definitely look up his website. Look him up on social media as well. From here on out, David, the schedule as a whole gets considerably tougher. Louisville, Virginia Tech, ranked Pitt, and South Carolina on the schedule. Cole and I, we like to look for elements where a team gets stressed moments, right? How are they going to perform in the biggest games, in the biggest situations? Knowing the guys on this roster the way that you do, how do you believe those individuals will handle those stress moments, which we haven't seen them face on the field very often, not since the Georgia game at least?
I guess it kind of remains to be seen. They've got I think a really nice test with Louisville to begin with at home, because Louisville, they play at Boston College this Friday night, but now they've got 2 losses in conference, and they have absolutely no room for error. If they lose at Boston College, well, that's it. They have no shot at an ACC championship. And look, with 2 losses, they may not have one anyway, considering Clemson has none, SMU has none, Miami has none. You don't know if those teams are going to lose 2. But Louisville knows that they are in desperation mode. I think that's going to be a great first test for them. Who knows if it's going to be a night game or a noon game? It's probably going to be one of the two, right? Clemson doesn't get the 3:30 slot anymore. But I think that's going to be a great first test for them. And then they have that 2-game road trip that's really going to tell the tale for me. Virginia Tech playing a lot better. They suffered a really, ugly loss to Vanderbilt earlier in the year. They suffered a loss to Rutgers. They had that loss at Miami where you think maybe the officials intervened a little bit, but they've been playing better. And then how about Pitt with former Alabama quarterback Eli Holstein? They're playing great. It's going to be a nice 3-game stretch for Clemson right there heading into those final 2 against the Citadel in South Carolina.
It was a big day in Clemson, David, for several reasons, but Tony Elliott being in town was probably the biggest. I don't know if you guys specifically got to hear from Dabo about, him and Tony talking pregame. I know he asked everybody to get their picture and then leave him alone and let him have some time to talk. But from what you can tell, what did it mean for Tony Elliott? And also on the flip side of that, did you feel that as if Tony Elliott regrets that decision in any way?
Oh, no. Tony was ready for a head coaching job. And, I think it shows his growth that he even said earlier in the week that it really wasn't about him coming back to Clemson. It was really about his football team and getting them ready to play. And that's what a head coach is supposed to do. And he did not wax romantic or poetic about a return. His wife and 2 kids, Tamika, AJ, and Ace, they came back with him. They kind of got to do the whole fan thing and go see some people that they know. But Tony stayed with his team. Spent some time with Dabo there pregame. We got our photographer, Merrill Mann, got a great photo of Tony spending some time with David Seville there at midfield. And then it was just kind of like he did his hat tip to CJ Spiller. And then it was time to go play. He really, didn't come in early. They flew in to Greenville. They stayed at a Greenville hotel. He didn't come in on Friday night to come see anybody. It really shows his growth as a coach, that it truly was all about the team for him. And if they give him time, you can see that there are pieces there for him to have a quality program. It's still just pieces, but they're there.
David, slow, methodical climb up the AP top 25 for Clemson right now. They've moved from 10 to 9. What were your initial thoughts when you saw that just one spot jump there? Do you believe that was completely justified? Do you think that the AP voters are looking at, the weak competition? Are they looking at, more at the defensive performance in that game? What was your thoughts?
Yeah, probably just more the schedule. Clemson, has really played one team of the pulse, and they got beat. Otherwise, it's kind of been a bunch of teams that just aren't going to, really register on the radar. That's why this next 3-game stretch is so important for them, because Louisville is capable of pulling off an upset. Virginia Tech is playing better. Pitt is undefeated. South Carolina is playing a whole lot better. Went out to Oklahoma and won. But for them, it's really not about the AP poll. It just truly isn't. It's, for them, and it's not even so much about the college football rankings that are going to come out on November I think it's the 5th, that first set of rankings that are going to come out. Because for them, it's going to be about winning the ACC. That's their path to the playoff, is coming out or, playing really well and coming out and losing a close game to an undefeated Miami team or somebody like that in an ACC playoff. So for them right now, it's all about the schedule. They haven't played anybody. Now they're still blowing people out, playing really well. I think I saw somebody on Twitter said that Clemson is the most proven, unproven team in America. And that sounds about right.
David Hood, TigerNet.com, joining us right here on the Fan Upstate. David, you've watched a lot of Clemson football, and this year, with what you're seeing with this Clemson team in 2024, as well as what you've seen in the past, how do you measure what we just talked about, what you just hit on? How do you measure if a team really is getting better week by week and improving from that Georgia loss? Or how do you look and see a team that just is playing the teams that are on their schedule and maybe a victim of their opponents and really aren't improving in your mind?
Well, you just go back to are they people laugh at Coach Sweeney when he says this, but you play against Clemson. All coaches say that you play to a standard, and are they kind of playing to an upper standard? And if this was a team that beat NC State, 34-31 on a last second field goal, had to hang on to beat Stanford, had to, come back late in the third quarter to beat Wake Forest, then you go, man, there's questions. But this team's kind of going out really early and just annihilating teams. And so you go, okay, so not only are they really good, but they're just continuing to, to play their offense, to play their defense. Somebody asked me, how does this team compare to some of the playoff teams? Man, I'd really love to see them play somebody really good now that they've kind of got this mojo going. If I had to tell you one glaring difference, it would be defensive line. You just can't compare what you had with Dexter Lawrence, Christian Wilkins, Cleveland Farrell, Austin Bryant, some of those dogs to what they have today. The guys today are good. They're not that group. That to me is probably the biggest difference between this team and some of those playoff teams.
David, we heard, I think it was a week ago, 2 weeks ago, that the SEC and the Big Ten are potentially looking at a mid-season challenge that would, who knows what that could look like, right? It could be 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2, or some other, format. How much would it benefit the ACC to partner with the Big 12 in a similar fashion, in your opinion, to play, for example, for Clemson to play an Iowa State or a BYU, which are top 2 teams in the Big 12 right now, mid-season?
I think that'd be a lot of fun. And, it kind of gets you out of that doldrums of kind of having to play somebody that, nobody wants to see. And, I think that this is all a precursor to what we're going to see a decade from now. I really do. I think that a decade from now, you're going to see the top, like we've talked about before, the top 48 are going to be together, and the schedules are going to be a little bit different. And, you're going to see some of these exciting matchups week to week. And, for everybody that hates it and they love the regional rivalries, and, I hear Clemson fans all the time, man, I just want to keep playing, Georgia Tech and NC State and some of those traditional rivalries. But, man, what we're seeing this weekend with South Carolina going to Oklahoma, with Texas hosting Georgia. Texas has got to go to Vanderbilt this week. Oregon and Ohio State playing a conference game. Man, some of this is really fun. It is fun to see. And, you don't have to see Oregon beat up on Arizona State or Washington State or somebody like that. I think, some of this cross-country stuff is a lot of fun. And for Clemson and the Big 12, you know what? That'd be a nice fit.
David, when we talk about Cade Klubnik's success this season, I mean, just absolutely taking care of the football. His touchdown numbers are up compared to his turnovers. He's playing really well. If I tell you the biggest factor is the offensive line and the protection that he has, would you tell me that there's a better factor out there that would attribute to Cade's success in 2024?
I don't know that you could say a bigger factor. I think the fact that the wide receivers are healthy is probably right there with the offensive line, because he does have time, but now he's got some guys to throw it to. You get Salado healthy, sure. Antonio Williams has taken his game to another level. Now, he hasn't had Tyler Brown out there, but adding a Wesco, adding TJ Moore and kind of that threat is also a big deal, because if you look at what Clemson's offense was, they were not able to push the ball down the field. Antonio's maybe not so much a down the field guy as he is a guy that can take something short and take it long. But adding some of this downfield passing has made a big difference right there with the offensive line. And you heard Tony Elliott talking about it this week, that, what they saw was a lot of explosive plays, and they wanted to keep those in front of them. And he said, kind of make them throw underneath. And he said, then we just didn't do a very good job of covering that. So, I would put it right there. I'd say the two biggest things are that offensive line and having wide receivers that are able to go out and make plays.
David, it's incredible how the quarterback conversation has changed since the beginning of the season, since the offseason. We still had a lot of question marks about Cade Klubnik, and then we said behind him, we're in a tough spot potentially with Vizina and Pierman, who should be quarterback number 2 on that depth chart. From the experience that he's gotten this year, and it certainly helps that Clemson is putting up 500 yards of offense, and he's getting a lot of game time reps. Behind the scenes, how have you seen his actual game reps change the way Vizina has looked in practice?
Yeah, well, we don't get to go to practice. That's probably the biggest thing, is we haven't been to a practice since August. So, I don't really know how he's doing in practice anymore. I do know that I stayed behind in the press box Saturday to kind of write, and Vizina came back out with a trainer and was working on different routes and throwing things, and he's continuing to try to get better. I've actually liked what I've seen out of Christopher Vizina. I do. I think that, in some of the limited opportunities, he's been good. I didn't know if there had been an injury to Klubnik. Would it be Pierman or Vizina? I know he's second on the depth chart, but now that we've kind of seen him in game action, you realize Christopher Vizina probably is the true number 2. And, it's going to be interesting now, because now you look at the rest of the schedule and you go, is he going to get any snaps maybe until the Citadel?
Very well could be. David Hood, before we let you go, when you look at, you just said it a few moments ago, when you look at the remaining schedule that Clemson has, obviously some very important games coming up. We know that the meat of the schedule for this team is on the back end. But what do you want to see from Clemson before they do host Louisville on November the 2nd? Or would your answer be just the exact same thing we've seen thus far?
No, I just think that for Clemson, it's going to be all about getting Bryant Wesco healthy. He's been battling an ankle issue. Could he have gone this week? I've heard he was at practice and was able to do some things. And, if they had really needed him, maybe he could have gone. But getting him healthy and back out in that wide receiver rotation, Tyler Brown, another guy they got to get kind of healthy. They've had some guys on the offensive line, Colin Sadler, that's been dinged up. I think for them, it's just taking these, 12 or 13 days and getting them healthy. And then they just come back out and keep rolling and doing what they're doing.
David, great stuff as always, man. The shortest radio segment in the history of radio segments. Right now, we know David Hood went a little long, but Diesel, 2 games in the NFL tonight. Ravens, Bucks, 8:15. Chargers, Cardinals, 9 o'clock. Real quick, give me some winners. Ravens, Bucks. I'm going Baltimore. Who are you going?
I'm going the challenger here. I'm going the Buccaneers.
Buccaneers. Diesel's taking the home team. Chargers, Cardinals. Should be a decent game. A 1-point spread in favor of the Chargers tonight. Vegas expecting a close one.
It's a game in Arizona.
I'm going Cardinals at home.
Well, I'll take the Chargers on the road.
Monday Night Football ×2 tonight. And we, Diesel, will be live on location tomorrow.
Yes, we will. Morgan Square Madness, your first chance to meet the 2024-25 Upstate Spartans men's and women's basketball team, plus a chance for Cole and I to embarrass ourselves.
Oh, boy.
Or rise to the occasion, because we're going to be in a shooting challenge. Can Cole even get it to the rim? Not that kind of shooting challenge.
Sorry. I would feel good about that. See you tomorrow, Tellos.